Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a very good afternoon. This is Talk Drive. I'm Peter Cardwell. Thank you so much for your company. There's so much to talk about, including what's going on in Crowborough. Now, there are a lot of angry local residents, very unhappy that the first migrants have moved into a former army barracks. 65 of them, 65 civil servants, meanwhile, are the only people who are being used to track down 53,000 illegal migrants on the run across Britain. I think it probably takes more than 65 people in order to do that job. We'll talk about what Robert Jenrick has said as well. He says he's split up the Home Office. Also in Labour politics, Andrew Gwynn, the controversial former MP, soon to be former MP for Denton and Redditch, well, he was a health minister. He was sacked essentially in disgrace because of very offensive messages. There was anti-Semitism, there was criticising older people for complaining about bins. It really was a bit of a scandal. He's standing down as a Labour MP, paving the way for a by-election. Reform UK will be sharpening their knives and certainly getting their ducks in a row when it comes to that. They will really want to take that seat. Very interestingly, Labour, of course, will put up Andy Burnham. Imagine he's defeated. He could win, of course, in Labour. The polls and indeed the bookies odds would say at the moment that he may well take that seat. It'll be very interesting to talk that through with Patrick Diamond a little bit later on. We'll get Ryan Saby's thoughts as well on that from The Sun. Mad story today as well about a cat burglar, an Amazon delivery driver who stole a cat. Now the cat is back, but Peter Egan, the animal rights activist, will talk about this. And animal theft is something we do need to talk about. Also, Trump, that's all calmed down as we predicted it would on Greenland. He's found a solution to it. Simon Diggins will take us through that. And why is Victoria Beckham at number one? Well, we'll find out all about that, and we'll talk to Matt Vickers, the Shadow Home Office Minister. Loads to discuss between now and 7 o'clock. Make sure you get your voice heard. 0344 499 1000 to give me your view on Crowborough, give me your view on Denton and Redditch, give me your view on Victoria Beckham, whatever you want to talk about. And who would you like to see at number one? Who are the forgotten pop stars of the past who deserve to come back and gain the glory of a number one? 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me at 72222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell, send me a voice note, less than a minute please, to the main number. You can also send me a WhatsApp text message to the main number and give me a ring on the main number, which is of course 0344 499 1000. So much to discuss on Talk Drive. Let's do it together here between now and 7. Well, earlier our reporter Samara Gill was live in Crowborough with the latest. We'll watch that in just a second, but the illegal migrants who've been moved into the Crowborough military barracks, this is to try to take the pressure a little bit off the hotels, certainly. But what has happened is the hotels often had a few people, a few hundred people, but in Crowborough you could have more than 500 illegal immigrants. The government says as part of their mission to end the use of expensive hotels, more than 400 hotels, they say, were opened under the last government at a cost of £9 million a day. Now just under 200 remain in use, with overall asylum costs down 15%, saving over £500 million in hotel spending last year as we deliver our commitment to close every hotel. But what about if you live in Crowborough? That can't be much fun, especially when you have these people coming in who've contributed absolutely nothing to our country, should be processed quickly, but they could be there for months or even years. Let's get the latest from what Samara Gill was reporting a little bit earlier on in Crowborough.
I've been speaking with people who are absolutely enraged. Property prices, they think, have just plummeted in their local area. There's someone who's got an actual patch of land that is right where the barracks are, and they can already see men loitering. They're worried about the safety of their women and girls. This is a town that has been absolutely sort of plunged into mayhem because of the government's choices. Now, Shabana Mahmood has obviously said that this is a good thing because she wants to get migrants out of hotels. That's the whole Labour edict, is that they want to get migrants out of hotels and into army facilities that are a little bit less cushy and luxury. But the effect is still same on the communities. There are still men being placed into communities which we know nothing about. So I think the root cause, it has not been solved, and there are plenty of people out here that I'm just looking at behind me that are fearing at the moment and feeling like their town is a little more unsafe today.
Samara Gill reporting a little bit earlier from Crowborough. Well, let's speak to Councillor Andrew Wilson. He's an independent councillor for Crowborough South East. Andrew, thanks for joining me on Talk Drive today. What do you make of this? You knew it was coming for a while. Now it's happened.
Well, the interesting thing, Peter, and thank you for having me on, it was only yesterday that the Home Office actually gave us an indication that they were actually going to definitely
It was definitely going ahead, yeah.
Yeah.
Not much notice, is it?
Well, we got a matter of hours. They promised the District Council and the community at least 72 hours notice, but quite frankly, since this news broke that Crowborough was potentially going to be used as a site to house 540 illegal migrants on October the 28th last year, Home Office has broken promise after promise after promise.
What other promises do you think they've broken?
Well, I don't think it, I know it. I mean, they promised to provide impact and risk assessments to the District Council. They didn't do that. They've rode back on a number of things. And this is just, you know, the very, very poor tasting icing on the cake, quite frankly. To sneak people in at 3:30 in the morning, giving the community pretty much no notice whatsoever, is duplicitous. And it is an insult, quite frankly, to a community which has demonstrated 11 weeks in a row that it does not want this training camp, which was previously used by children in the town because it was a cadet training facility. It does not want that to be transferred into one of the biggest illegal migrant accommodation sites in the country.
I totally understand where you're coming from on that. The Home Office say robust safety and public protection safeguards are in place at Crowborough. Specialist security are on site 24/7 with CCTV and strict sign-in procedures for residents. All asylum seekers will be screened against policing, criminality and immigration databases and will have completed initial health checks before arriving. Does that give you any succour at all? Does that help in any way?
No, and I'll tell you why. The camp is a non-detained camp. That's the wording the Home Office used. So all asylum accommodation in the UK is what they call non-detained. And they've spent more money and effort trying to secure the camp for the what they call service users in the camp than they have conversing with the community around the measures they are going to do to protect the community in the event of any issue.
Tell me what your fears are, Andrew. What are you worried about here? I can imagine what they would be, but I want to hear them from you. What are you worried about?
Well, I mean, if you look across the country, Peter, in any place where there's been large numbers of illegal migrants housed in either hotels or HMOs or just put in communities, there have been instances of horrific crimes. Crowborough is right at the north, just in geographical terms, it's right at the north of the East Sussex county boundary. And I've lived in Crowborough for 11 years. I'm a relatively new resident of Crowborough. There are families who've been here for generations. But I've seen more police cars today, just today, than I've seen in the past 11 years. You know, we are at the extent of the operational policing sort of envelope. The response times historically have been 20 to 40 minutes for even minor things, and that's if they turn up at all. And yet we're going to have 540 people at any one time housed in that camp. And over 12 months, because they're going to house them for 70 to 90 days at a time, if I take the lower end of that number and assume that each person will be there for 70 days, that's almost 2,800 individuals who will be passing through Crowborough. And with each individual that we don't know their background, that increases the risk. So that is a risk. There's a bus stop right outside the camp. It's used by the local school children to get to school in Uckfield. So people have to potentially make changes to the way they do things. Mothers are perhaps going to be driving their children to school. I've heard of several people who are actually withdrawing their children from school. Interestingly, the lorry you just had up on the screen there, that took a wrong turn and went down a private road and got stuck for an entire day. That's the one. In the back of that lorry was 5 tons of fencing, and that was back in December. And yet the Home Office in December was saying they've not made a decision on the camp.
Yeah. And it's interesting, I mean, the details you're giving there, the police presence that has been there for over the last day or two, do you think that's for the people who are resident of the centre, or do you think they're worried about protesters here? Because you're very dignified, peaceful protests over the last number of weeks have certainly been strongly attended, well attended, a lot of people putting their points across, but you haven't been a danger, have you? There haven't been any arrests that I've read about.
There's been no arrests. As I said, there's been 11 protests. There's been no arrests. There was one incident of violence relating to the camp, and that was actually a car came out of the camp gate with 3 men with balaclavas on at about 8 o'clock at night. They got out of the vehicle and they assaulted a member of the public. So that is the only incident of violence that I have been made aware of.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it has been a peaceful protest. These are not ideological protests. They're not what some people might term far right. This is literally the community turning out every week to say no to this plan.
Have you been surprised at the number of people and the type of people who've come out necessarily? These are just ordinary local residents, aren't they?
Yes. It's children as young as a few months old being pushed in prams by their mothers, up to pensioners who don't do the whole walk because it walks from the camp uphill into the town. It's about a mile and a bit, just over a mile. But there is a nursing home we walk past, and every week the residents of that nursing home stand up and wave from their windows.
Yeah.
This is a community protest saying to Shabana Mahmood and Alex Norris, who's her junior minister responsible for this, Crowborough is not happy about this plan. It is not an appropriate place to put 540 illegal migrants.
We should say we asked both the Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood and Alex Norris, who is her junior minister responsible for this, on the programme today. They said no, but we have a statement from Shabana Mahmood. And I wonder what you make of it, Andrew. Illegal migration has been placing immense pressure on communities. That is why we are removing the incentives that draw illegal migrants to Britain, choosing asylum hotels that are blighting communities. Crowborough is just the start. I will bring forward site after site until every asylum hotel is closed and return to local communities. I will not rest until order and control to our borders is restored. What do you make of that, Andrew?
Well, I was aware that she made that statement. I understand that the Home Office actually wanted to embargo that statement until 10 p.m. tonight, and there was a pushback from the press, and good on you for doing so. But, my view is that she's talking absolute nonsense, because, this does not solve the cost problem. Crowborough, taking an example, is going to be just as expensive as hotels. So
how do you know that, Andrew?
Well, those are Alex Norris's words.
Okay.
And you can go back to Hansard, and he said that was the case on October the 29th last year. So it's not cheaper, and it's not going to ease pressure on communities. There are houses literally within a few yards of that camp entrance.
Okay. Andrew, thank you. Thanks for speaking to me today. That's Councillor Andrew Wilson, who's an independent councillor in Crowborough for Crowborough South East. What do you make of this? 0344 499 1000. This is not just about Crowborough. This is not just about what's happening there. The Home Secretary says, I will bring forward site after site until every asylum hotel is closed and returned to local communities. Maybe there's a disused army base near you or facilities that you're worried about. Let me know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. Damon says, so the illegal migrants have moved in the barracks and Crowborough and their security and cameras, etc. How long do we think it will be before crime is up in the area and sexual advances are made to young girls, and that is on the rise? This has happened before. There's evidence to suggest it. When is the government going to learn this is not what British people want? And as a veteran, I'm ashamed of what this country has become. Thanks, Peter, says Damon. Just on the veterans aspect, I've got a message from I can't remember who it was, someone messaged me to ask me, oh yes, Leslie said, are you going to discuss Labour's treacherous vote on the legacy bill? It's shameful. Yes, we are. I'm going to discuss that with Simon Diggins a little bit later on, Colonel Simon Diggins. So Leslie, don't worry about that. We will cover that. Covered it yesterday. We've covered it for quite a while on my shows on Talk, and we will continue to do so. Fear not. Just on Andy Burnham and this MP standing down, Andrew Gwynn, Dawn says, I can't believe Starmer won't attempt to stop Andy Burnham from standing in the by-election. Well, that's actually what we're talking about next, because Patrick Diamond is standing by. He's a former Labour advisor, and he will bring us through all of this to see what might happen. I think Reform UK are going to be on manoeuvres immediately looking at Denton and Redditch. I expect they probably have been already behind the scenes wanting to win that. Can you imagine the upset that would cause? It's really going to be a really, really interesting by-election, and not just to nerds like me. So stay with us here on Talk. We're going to discuss that in just a second here on Talk Drive. Stay with us.
Why are our politicians crucifying our veterans? I am so angry. I am so furious. None of them have ever carried a rifle. What's next? Afghan? Iraq? Hey? No shame on these people. Disgrace.
These are men and women who put their lives on the line for our country, and we've got a government who thinks it would be a good idea to prosecute them. This is the same party that's gladly going to sit around the table with Jerry Adams and IRA leaders who blew to smithereens people's lives, their homes and their businesses for many, many years.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, thank you so much to everybody who has been in touch. Lots of tweets coming in as well. Just had a quick look during the break there, and thank you to the people who sent those in. I can't seem to see them on my phone. Apologies about that. I thought oh, they're on the other phone. They're on the other phone. I have two phones. I'm not a drug dealer, or so I would have you believe anyway. Yes, here we are. Craig says, how long is it in Crowborough before the first sexual assault is committed, says Craig. And Angela says, what an insult to the people of Crowborough. How can it be deemed safe if undocumented men are allowed to freely walk about? And lots of people as well questioning the logic of all of this. Carol in North Wales says, I don't understand how Labour says the barracks will save money. From what I understood, they gave the hotels contracts for so many years, some quite long. They may remove the migrants, but surely they have to still pay for the hotels. Well, there's lots to talk about in all of this. The big story for Labour today as well is the fact that Andrew Gwynn, who lost the whip after a number of horrible messages that he had put on WhatsApp groups, came to light. He lost the whip. He was sitting as an independent. He's now decided to stand down as an MP on health grounds. It's in Denton and Redditch, which is a Manchester constituency, and that is in the Greater Manchester area. And that's where Andy Burnham may now, hypothetically, a lot of what ifs in this, may decide to stand as Labour leader, and that may well, as Labour MP, getting ahead of myself, and there may of course be a big threat to Keir Starmer as a result of that. Patrick Diamond is a former Labour advisor and a really, really good analyst of all of this. Patrick, thank you for joining me on the programme again. I wonder what you think will happen now, especially when we look at some of the statistics around this, some of the suggestions from betting odds as well as polling, which would suggest that it would be a very tight race between whoever the Labour candidate is and a Reform UK candidate.
Well, good afternoon, Peter, and good to be with you. Yeah, as you rightly said in your opening remarks, there's a lot of ifs here. And so I think the assumption that somehow, Andy Burnham is weeks away from being Labour leader, which, if you read some of the media today, you might be led to believe, is somewhat off track. This creates the possibility for Andy Burnham to come back into national politics. But there are many, many unknowns that would arise here, one of which is, does he actually get the selection to contest the seat on behalf of the Labour Party?
Because Keir Starmer can have a role, or those at least who support Keir Starmer can have a role in that with the National Executive Committee, if I understand correctly.
That's entirely correct. So the National Executive Committee has a special by-election panel to select candidates when a by-election arises, and that panel would take a view. And I don't think you can assume that it would allow Andy Burnham's name to go forward.
If it doesn't, though, that'll cause a big upset too, won't it?
Of course, and we've seen in the past attempts to block candidates from standing. It always causes a massive political row, but it could happen. And I think beyond that, again, as you said, there's of course the fact that you can't take for granted that Andy Burnham would necessarily win the constituency. There'll be a hotly contested by-election. And given the government's relative unpopularity, according to the opinion polls, you cannot assume that Labour would win.
Let's just hear a little bit from Andy Burnham. This is at the end of last year on BBC Radio Manchester. He was asked directly about the Labour leadership, and this is what he told BBC Radio Manchester at the time.
MPs were in touch with me, but let me also give an honest explanation of what I said to those MPs. It's not up to me. It's not my decision. That's a matter for you, for the party in Parliament. And also I said to them, and it's got to be about more than a personality contest. The Tories were just constantly going through this at the latter end of the time that they were in government. It's got to be about a plan, a proper plan for the country and a proper plan to beat reform.
Andy Burnham there speaking to BBC Radio Manchester at the end of last year. Patrick, Andy Burnham, is he the great white hope? He's lost a leadership election twice for the Labour Party, and that's going to come up, and there'll be lots of criticism of how he's run Manchester. Some people say he's done a really good job, some people say he's neglected all sorts of things. He at least has a record, both as a cabinet minister and as a Metro mayor. But if you were Keir Starmer sitting in Downing Street at the moment, would you be quaking in your boots?
Well, he won't be quaking in his boots because Keir Starmer's got much bigger things to worry about, including the foreign policy of the American president.
Maybe we'll talk a little bit about that in a second, get your views on that, Patrick.
Keeping him awake more at night. But no, I don't think he's quaking in his boots. But of course, Andy Burnham emerging in Parliament does present the option of having an alternative leader. So it would stoke speculation. It would lead to instability. There's no doubt about that. I think you also asked in your question, is Andy Burnham the person to transform Labour's fortunes? And I think here, we do need to step back and say he has been effective in Manchester. He's regarded as a good mayor. I recognise what you say, that he hasn't solved all the problems of Manchester. But I think the bigger question is, can he do for Manchester what he's done in that city on the national stage? Mm-hmm. And as you know, governing a nation is a very different and more challenging task to running a city.
What's your instinct here? It's impossible to predict these things, and I've often been asked this kind of question before and got it horribly, horribly wrong. But if we look at a set of local elections, we know that quite a number of them have been postponed. We'll talk a bit more about that later in the programme. But for Keir Starmer, he's on the ropes here. He's an unpopular leader. His backbenchers are causing a lot of mayhem. I just wonder what your thought would be. What do you think is the most likely outcome here over the next few months?
You can't underplay the dissatisfaction in the Labour Party and in the Parliamentary Labour Party in particular. Anyone who has a cursory look at the newspapers day by day can see that there is dissatisfaction. But what we sometimes, I think, underestimate is just the strength of that notion of better the devil you know. There'll be many MPs who aren't necessarily at all impressed with the current Prime Minister's leadership, but when it comes down to it, do they really want to expose the party and the country to another prolonged bout of speculation and instability around a change of Prime Minister? And I think the difficulty that Andy Burnham has is he has to demonstrate not just that he could potentially be better, but that he's going to fundamentally transform Labour's prospects if he becomes Prime Minister. And I'm not sure so far that he's really set out the ideas or direction to be able to do that.
What do you make of, you mentioned, of course, the President of the United States and all the pretty random things he has said over the last few days. We've been talking about Greenland an awful lot on this programme now. Unsurprisingly, the TACO, the Trump always, what is it? TACO stands for Trump always backs down, or I can't remember exactly what it is, but he has a nickname for sort of claiming he'll do things and then not doing them. And it seems that things have calmed down to a huge extent there. That little blip has gone there. So what do you think of how Starmer has handled that? He didn't go to Davos. He talked a strong game anyway at Prime Minister's Questions yesterday. What do you think?
I think Keir Starmer, look, there are many complaints about his leadership, and I think in particular getting progress on the domestic policy front is clearly a big challenge for him. But in foreign policy, I think there's a recognition that Starmer has generally played a difficult hand well, and I think he's done that in this crisis. To be honest, I think he has shown that probably the calm diplomacy is the best approach. And it does seem that Britain, along with other European countries, has essentially forced the US president to back down, which, as you know, Peter, is not easy given his own inclinations. So, yeah, I think on this one, Starmer would be generally seen as having played a difficult hand pretty well.
Let's just see what the Prime Minister has been saying today about the maelstrom. Actually, by the way, TACO, Trump always chickens out. I just didn't have it in my head at that exact moment. Apologies, but he often threatens things, doesn't do them. This is what the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, has been saying today.
You may have seen, but it is a good thing that yesterday the threat of tariffs against the United Kingdom was lifted, and now we can start the hard yards of finding a way forward on security in the Arctic, which may seem a long way away, pretty remote, but actually does matter to all of us in terms of the safety and security of our country. And we've got through the last few days with a mix of British pragmatism, common sense, but also that British sense of sticking to our values and our principles. But now, as I say, the hard yards of actually finding a better way for security for our country, for Europe, and across the globe.
The Prime Minister speaking earlier today. Patrick, on this Board of Peace, this pseudo-UN attempt by Trump anyway, there seems to be quite a rogues gallery of people who've joined it. Was Starmer right to give it a swerve, do you think?
I think he's probably right to step back and see how it evolves, and clearly that it's being set up as an alternative to the United Nations, for example, it is a big challenge to the way that international diplomacy has worked. So I think Starmer keeping his distance is probably the right approach. Yeah. But what really strikes me is just, you know, we're only a year into the Trump presidency. I mean, what has the last year felt like in terms of the roller coaster? So what are the next 3 years going to bring? Yeah. I mean, it's a big question, but you know, we are being hit, we're being buffeted by these constant challenges, instability, new announcements by Trump, new initiatives. So I think it's going to be a real challenge for Starmer to demonstrate that calm diplomacy can deal with all of these problems and all of the instability it brings.
Just a final question, Patrick, before you go. I don't expect you to be an expert on this policy. It's a complicated policy, but when it comes to prosecuting soldiers, there was that big legacy bill, the Northern Ireland Troubles Bill, that went through yesterday. A lot of our viewers and listeners, often from military families, very annoyed about that, think the Prime Minister has betrayed veterans to our country. What would you say to them if you've been following this story, Patrick?
Well, I'm not an expert on the policy, as you inferred earlier, so I wouldn't want to comment too much other than to say that I really obviously understand and respect the strength of feeling. And I think what veterans contributed, what they contributed to keeping peace in Northern Ireland over that long period of the Troubles was obviously immense. And so I just hope that we can assuage those concerns in due course, and obviously I feel greatly for the distress that they've experienced on these matters.
Patrick, thanks very much. Yeah, it was probably one of the biggest policy areas I worked for in the Northern Ireland office, and there's a lot of strength of feeling about it. But it is a complicated policy, and I just thought I'd just ask you about that before you went, Patrick, because you have such great analysis. It's brilliant to have you on the programme, and I hope to speak to you soon. That's Patrick Diamond there, the former Labour advisor. What do you make of everything he said there? 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Lots of people getting in touch about Andrew Gwynn as well. Leslie says, hi Peter, if Burnham stands against reform in Denton and Gordon, he can't accuse reform of privatising the NHS, seeing as he's the only Labour minister to fully privatise an NHS hospital. Don in Chancellor says, I can't believe Starmer won't attempt to stop Andy Burnham from standing in the by-election. Well, we'll see what happens there, certainly. Margaret in Birmingham says, why ship these migrants in the middle of the night? It's disgraceful, devious, and treating the people of Crowborough with contempt. That sums up what they think of us, the British people, says Margaret. 900 over this week and still no deterrent. Starmer and the Home Secretary need to get this sorted now. Dawn says there's a statue of Arthur Conan Doyle in Crowborough. He would never have envisaged a migrant camp. Even Sherlock Holmes would be baffled. John Roberts in Germany says, don't be fooled by this spending on hotels that has fallen 15%. How much is now being spent on homes of multiple occupancy and converting camps into living quarters for illegal migrants? I'd love to know what the full cost of all spending is on this migrant debacle. And John, that's a very, very good point. I'm not sure we'll ever truly get to the bottom of it. What we do know, though, is Robert Jenrick, he's now, of course, in Reform UK. He says he's split up the Home Office. He says there needs to be a Borders department. Also an interesting story today about the fact that there are so few civil servants that are actually working on this. There are only 65 of them whose job it is to track down, to hunt down 53,000 illegal migrants who have disappeared from our system. Tim in South Wales is the first caller of Talk Drive today. Tim, it's great to talk to you. Thank you so much for your call. 0344 499 1000. What do you make of what's happening in Crowborough, Tim?
Hi, Peter.
Hi there.
The thing that occurred to me, I was talking to a friend of mine who's an estate agent in the area, and he said to me that since the migrant camp was opened or started, they've had no interest at all in the houses that they're selling. They've got new homes developments down there. Nothing's happening with that. And frankly, it turns the area into an economic wasteland. Nobody's going to move there. Nobody's going to be interested. Why would you go to that?
Well, exactly. I mean, that is going to have a huge effect on the economy of the area. It's going to have a huge effect on house prices and whether people actually want to go there to work or to live, Tim. And it does strike me as very unfair.
I agree. I agree entirely. I think the government's got to look very, very carefully at what they're doing with this. The costs are not just the cost of the accommodation or benefits or whatever. It's the economic cost throughout.
Yeah. Tim, really good thoughts there from South Wales. Thank you very much. That's Tim, who gave me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Sean in Bridlington, very sceptical about what Shabana Mahmood says her statement is a lie in Sean's view. The illegal immigrants leaving hotels for camps will have their vacated hotel rooms filled with the latest new arrivals. They will not shut them down. Well, in fairness, some of those hotels have closed. I mean, that is factual, Sean. And Kay, not enough of them, obviously, and Labour says it wants to close them all. But if you're just moving the problem, well, does that actually help in any way? Kay in London says, if Crowborough camp is anything like it was when I used to teach cadets there, the immigrants will be complaining soon enough and demanding to be moved on. Lots of people getting in touch. We'll take more calls, text, tweets and voice notes right through at the programme, right up to 7 o'clock. Of course, Ryan Sabey, Deputy Political Editor of The Sun, is next on Andrew Gwynn and the postponement of all those local elections as well. There are 29 different areas where local elections have been postponed. What do you think of that? Maybe you're in one of those areas. Let me know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you to Yvonne in Somerset, who says, Peter, I don't think local communities are going to forgive those hotel owners who sold out their customers for a quick buck. I hope their businesses never recover from their betrayal of local communities. Yvonne, I know what you mean there, but if you're a hotel and you're told you're going to have guaranteed occupancy year round in this economy, I know a hotel owner in the north of England who's been offered this on a couple of occasions. He's turned it down twice, and he really has, especially on the second occasion, had a bit of a dark night of the soul about it, just wondering what on earth, what's the right thing to do here, because he's against the principle, he's against the fact that people could go into his hotel, but at the same time he could retire early, he could have a guaranteed income. That would be something that would change his life. And it's different if you're a big sort of faceless corporate entity, but if you run a hotel with 10 rooms or 20 rooms or something, it really could change things quite dramatically financially. So Yvonne, I know exactly what you mean, but I do have a little bit of sympathy for the kind of decisions people take, especially when you're guaranteed that income. Maybe I'm wrong, and let me know if I'm wrong, and do let me know if you want to text me again. Yvonne, I'll ask the producers behind the scenes to look out for a text for you, and if you send it in again between now and 7 o'clock, I'll try to make sure to read it out. Graham says, good afternoon, Peter. Good afternoon, Graham. The Home Secretary talks about giving the asylum hotels back to the communities, while at the same time putting far more migrants into Ministry of Defence facilities in the same towns. Who's going to want to come to these towns and stay in the hotels, knowing that hundreds of migrants will be congregating about them anyway? The Home Office obviously doesn't do irony, says Graham in Stirling. Graham, it's a really good point, and if you look at somewhere like Bournemouth, I mean, they may have people in the hotels, but what about the tourism industry? And when those asylum seekers, at some stage, maybe aren't there anymore, will the tourism industry actually recover from all of that? There's loads about today. There's loads I want your thoughts on. 0344 499 1000. And there's loads politically as well. Ryan Saby is the deputy political editor of The Sun. He's their economics editor as well, and he joins me now. How are you doing, Ryan? You okay?
Oh, well, Peter.
It's a busy, busy day politically. I know Greenland is dominating for many people, but I mean, there's nothing more exciting to nerds like you and me than a good old by-election in Denton and Redditch. Just talk us through what's happened here and what you think is on the cards, because Reform UK and Andy Burnham will be looking at this really closely. It'll be fascinating to see what happens in the next few days and weeks.
Yeah, that's right. To go very back to the beginning, Andrew Gwynn, the MP, the sitting MP, has had ill health over recent months. And what that has done, there's been lots of speculation around him actually standing down. Now, there's been rumours, there's been whispers around Westminster for many, many weeks. And today was the day where he put out a statement saying that that was actually going to happen. Now, what this has done, and I think one of the reasons that Andy Burnham's name has come into the frame is because Keir Starmer is under so much pressure when it comes to his leadership, and Andy Burnham is always seen as that outsider, someone from outside the Westminster bubble who may be able to challenge this. There is also the issue of geography. Andy Burnham is the mayor for Manchester, and it could well be very convenient for Andy Burnham to stand in that seat. However, there are hurdles all along the way for Andy Burnham. That will he actually become the Labour candidate to take that seat, or will it be held up?
Starmer could actually, his loyalists on the National Executive Committee could actually block that, couldn't they?
Yeah, no, that's right. He needs sort of express permission to actually stand as a candidate. So that's one issue. There's also the issue of all the candidates that could be selected for Labour being female. So he's got a lot of there's lots of talk about him becoming the next Labour leader, but before he even gets there, he actually has to become an MP. Now, let's actually take you to the potential battle, the fight for that seat. You are going to have a by-election where Reform and Nigel Farage will throw the kitchen sink at the seat.
They've literally just said that the party would throw everything out the Gorton and Denton by-election. The party spokesman for Reform UK, if the by-election happens, then Reform will throw everything at it. It's a huge ask for anyone to beat Labour in Manchester, but we will give it our all, they say.
Yeah, that's right. And I think what an interesting thing about that is that they see the seat as being in play, even as that Gorton seat as a majority, sort of relatively healthy majority these days of around 13,000.
I mean, there's so many MPs, Ryan, who would kill for a majority of 13,000. That these days, it used to be 20,000 plus. These days, 13,000 is a huge majority. If Reform UK overturned that, especially if they beat Andy Burnham, that would be cataclysmic, wouldn't it?
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think that's why you're going to see, no matter who stands in that seat, Nigel Farage, he may as well buy a flat up in that part of Manchester, because he'll be there so often. So I think you're going to see Reform go there. But I also think it's going to be interesting in terms of what the Labour leadership and this National Executive Committee do. Do they let Andy Burnham actually stand in that seat and face Reform? Because it's a big risk for Andy Burnham. He could become a cropper by standing in that seat. And if he doesn't beat Reform, he doesn't beat a Reform candidate there, his political career in terms of going for Prime Minister is effectively over. So
it also looks really, really bad for Labour overall if they lose that, no matter who the candidate is, but particularly if you have Nigel Farage the next morning with another Reform MP saying, you threw everything at that, we threw everything at that. You've got one of your most high-profile people, very well-known politician, been a cabinet minister, been a Metro mayor, stood for Labour leadership twice, and you've got someone who we have beaten. Like that could be really seriously bad, not just for Andy Burnham, but for Labour more generally, couldn't it, Ryan?
Yeah, totally. It builds into this whole picture of what we've seen over the past year, 18 months or so, a Reform leading in pretty much every single opinion poll. It just feeds into that. So I think one thing that Keir Starmer, Andy Burnham, and the sort of the Labour sort of machinery have to be aware of, this could be just another staging post in the momentum of Reform. Robert Jenrick last week, Nadhim Zahawi the other week. And if they take another by-election like this is just such a major prize. And if that by-election, we haven't got the date for that yet, but if that is combined with the same day as the local elections, just look what it could create. That sort of that enthusiasm,
the momentum certainly for Reform UK. It would be quite a while though, of course, to wait for a by-election, but who knows, it could happen. And also a controversy today because Labour confirming it's going to postpone 29 areas because of this major reorganisation of councils. You've quite a number of councillors who may end up serving for 7 years rather than simply 5.
Yeah, that's right. And that's why you had a feisty exchange between the Shadow Community Secretary, James Cleverly, and his the government counterpart, Steve Reid, in the Commons. James Cleverly alluding to the fact that these elections were cancelled because Labour aren't doing very well in the polls.
We've actually, sorry to interrupt you, Ryan, but we've actually got a clip of that. This is the Housing Communities Local Government Secretary, Steve Reid, speaking about this in the House of Commons earlier on. Let's have a look.
To those who say we've cancelled all the elections, we haven't. To those who say it's all Labour councils, it isn't. I've asked, I've listened, and I've acted. No messing about, no playing politics, just getting on with the job of making local government work better for local people.
Not playing politics? Is that correct, Ryan, do you think?
I think if we take Steve Reid at the letter of the law, he's played it by the book, but it doesn't look good. Anyone who cancels elections, it doesn't matter if he's put representations out, he's listened to the representations of local council leaders, and it all plays into the reorganisation of local government. How does it look? You are denying 4-5 million people the vote at those elections, and it just doesn't look good. So he may well say local government can function better, but you're just open to attack from the likes of Nigel Farage or James Cleverly in the House of Commons earlier, and that's exactly how this is going to play out.
I wonder if we could talk a little bit about Greenland, Ryan, because Sean's been in touch from Bridlington and says, I had more to do with Trump dropping the tariffs over Greenland than Starmer. There is a lot of scepticism that the Prime Minister has really done anything here. He's claiming it as a victory. Should he?
I think there's something to be said for the role of European allies and working together. They have worked extremely closely, Britain, France, Germany, Mark Rutte from NATO. Now, it may not look from the outside that Keir Starmer was there in Davos actually doing something, but Downing Street very, very, clear today when I was at a briefing with Downing Street, that it's that sort of cool, calm, pragmatic diplomacy behind the scenes that has helped lead to this. It may well have been Keir Starmer telling some home truths to Donald Trump, where Prime Minister's questions yesterday, saying that he will not yield to Donald Trump's pressure. So I can see how it appears from the outside that it was the likes of Macron in Davos. Zelensky's there as well, but you've got a lot of world leaders there, and Mark Rutte, the head of NATO, there. But actually, behind the scenes, I think there was a lot of work being done by Britain.
Yeah, certainly, perhaps a little bit of spin as well. Ryan, thank you very much indeed. That's Ryan Saby there. He's Deputy Political Editor and Economics Editor of The Sun, joining us today. Ian in Bridgend has given me a ring at 0344 499 1000 about Andy Burnham. Ian, what do you think?
Oh, hello, Peter. Yeah, it was just an observation, really. I just Googled to see how many Labour MPs there are in Parliament, and knowing that there seems to be a bit of a groundswell against Keir Starmer. It's a terrible indictment of the Parliamentary Labour Party. There's 404 of them there, yet they've got to go outside Parliament to find somebody with the calibre to challenge Starmer.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, there'll be plenty inside as well, maybe Wes Streeting, Angela Rayner, people like that, who may well feel they want to challenge him. But, I mean, do you see Andy Burnham as the next Prime Minister of this country?
No, I don't. No, I'm sure that'll come as a complete surprise to you, Peter, but no, I don't.
OK. Ian, listen, thanks for your thoughts today. That's Ian in Bridgend there. We're going to talk in just a second about a story that caught the eyes of the two main cat lovers on the Drive Time team, myself and producer Ryan, which was about this Amazon cat burglar filmed stealing a pet from a Yorkshire doorstep. It's absolutely horrendous. The cat is now back with its owners. But how big a problem is this? And the footage is extraordinary. If you're perhaps listening on the radio or your smart speaker at the moment, switch on your app or YouTube or whatever. Have a look at this. We're going to play this after the next break to see exactly what happened. You can make up your own mind on this and let me know what you think as well about this or any other story. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
Welcome to Down the Local, the show that goes from pub to pub across the country, speaking to the punters about the subjects driving us all nuts at the moment.
Rachel Reeves, Rachel Thieves, Rachel McCounts.
I don't really know Meghan Markle. I know Meghan Markle's from Suits, and that's about it.
I don't know about anyone else, and I don't know where this is going. I have 0% beard, and I feel
raising the flag, I think, is symptomatic of its desperation.
Is public transport good value for money?
No, it isn't.
You really don't like speaking to people.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Many thanks to everybody who's been in touch. Angela says, what an insult to the people of Crowborough. How can it be deemed safe if undocumented men are allowed to freely walk about? Also, thanks to the person who has reminded me about Andrew Gwynn. We did mention this a little bit earlier, but of course he was suspended from the Labour Party last year after a newspaper reported offensive messages he sent in a WhatsApp group. Has had a lot of health issues as well, and he stood down on medical grounds. Lenny in Ashford says, just listening to Starmer about his principles, has he found them? So can we expect a new Starmer? And I'll get to a few other messages in a minute or two. But what I want to talk to you about now is this extraordinary footage, which I'll describe for those who are listening on the radio. But if you're watching it on your telly, on YouTube, on your connected device, whatever it is, it's an Amazon worker picking up a cat and basically stealing the cat. Carl Crowther is the owner of the cat, and he caught the man appearing to steal his cat, Nora. He said the man comes right up to the door, picks up the cat, turns around and walks off. The alleged abduction appears to have been spontaneous. The man seemed to be going about his job normally outside their home in West Yorkshire before stealing Nora the cat. He doesn't get a response at the door as no one was in, so he looks for somewhere safe to put the parcel, says Crowther. He then clocked the cat. He said he and his family were really worried for Nora's safety, as she always stays very close to home and is not used to new environments. Well, cats aren't used to new environments. They often stay, as he says. I know my cat Jack is never too far away from my flat. He's always in the general area. He goes outside. Crowther said, this morning after Nora had been missing since yesterday lunch, for some reason I looked at the camera to see if she'd been over the late afternoon or evening. We were devastated when we saw the driver lingering about, waiting to seize his opportunity. I was in total shock and disbelief when he picked her up and shoved her into the car. She needs to take medication for a heart murmur. She's now been returned to him, but this is just a really shocking thing. A spokesman for Amazon confirmed the company was investigating the incident and had been in touch with the police. Well, cat theft is something I've covered on my shows previously, and animal theft in general, and of course there is a huge emotional attachment. I know about that this week when my cat Jack there was a question over his health. Thankfully now he's absolutely fine, and people were lovely about that yesterday in the programme. But to have your cat stolen, well, that's horrendous. Peter Egan is an animal rights activist and joins me now. Peter, what do you make of this strange story, but actually it does happen from time to time?
Yeah, it's very, very strange, isn't it? Hi, Peter.
Hi there.
Nice to talk to you. What I think is most disturbing about it is the Amazon response to it, which was to say, how much is the cat worth? Is it kind of commodifying a companion animal, rather than showing deep concern for the fact that this driver stole the cat. The only response was, how much do you think it's worth? And I think very, very disturbing. I mean, that's something which does run through our attitude to a degree as far as animals are concerned, although we are reckoned to be an animal-loving country. But that I found the most shocking element.
On the answer in monetary value, certainly if it was my cat Jack, I mean, he's not actually worth anything. He's a rescue cat. If you sold, I would never sell him, and you should never sell animals. You should always adopt them. Adopt, don't shop. That's my mantra. But I mean, there would be no commercial value, but the emotional value of Nora, the emotional value of all our animals, dog, cat, whatever it is, can be priceless.
Huge. Absolutely huge. Yes, I remember many, many years ago that my late wife and I, a cat of ours, we called the wonderful cat Dasher, black Burmese cat, and we'd call it Dasher because it used to dash all over the place, and it disappeared for 3 days. It kind of, cats are very territorial, as you know. They are more attached to territory in some cases than people. And so Dasher disappeared. I went out every night for 3 nights calling out like a lunatic. And then on the 3rd day, he reappeared. And I can't tell you how wonderful that felt. I mean, I had been devastated for 3 days, and this wonderful creature came back, and I was overwhelmed. So yes, you're absolutely right. The wonderful connection we have with our companion animals is absolutely priceless.
Oh, Peter, on Friday I was told that my cat Jack had a lump on his tongue. and that they were sending it off to the lab to see. It's all fine, it's absolutely fine. When I got the message yesterday, I had to go into the toilets at work to have a bit of a cry. Honestly, I was so incredible. It was just absolute relief that it happened. I'm sure similar relief when Nora was returned here to Carl Crowther. But I mean, it's a strange thing that goes through someone's head when they think they can steal an animal or pick it up and move it to a new environment, because that is a very strange thing to do, and I would question many aspects of the motivation of this apparent act by the Amazon delivery driver as well. What did he hope to achieve?
Yeah, well, seems to be a very spontaneous act, and one can only think that either he was going to claim it for himself or sell it. I hope those were only the two alternatives.
Yeah.
And it'll be very interesting to find out when they do an investigation, to find out exactly what was going on with this driver, who was apparently not employed directly by Amazon, but was a subcontractor. So it'll be fascinating to see what was the motive behind this action. It's absolutely dreadful. Poor cat. I mean, with a heart murmur, it must have been absolutely shocked.
Yeah, definitely, and I'm sure Carl is very happy to have Nora back. Listen, thank you, Peter. I really appreciate you speaking to us today. That's Peter Egan, animal rights activist there, joining us on Talk Drive. Really extraordinary footage there, just that Amazon driver picking that cat up and taking it away. I really hope there aren't victims of animal theft out there, but if you are one of them, maybe you got your animal back, maybe you didn't, do let me know. 0344 499 1000. I'd love to speak to you. Thank you to Tim, who says, I wonder if Starmer and Burnham realise they've just lost the vote of around 8,000 veterans in Manchester by majority. Of course, it may not be in that particular constituency, but definitely this issue of veterans, which we're going to talk about with Simon Diggins in just a few minutes' time, actually. Simon is, of course, former colonel in the Army Defence and Security analyst. We'll talk about Trump, but we'll also talk about this Troubles bill. It was a big story yesterday. A lot of people very annoyed about it. It's now gone through. And Barry says, evening Peter, evening Barry, as a Banner veteran, Operation Banner was, of course, the operation where the UK Army were deployed to Northern Ireland to attempt to keep the peace during the 30 years of the Troubles there. As a Banner veteran, I am at a loss as to how Al Cairns, Dan Jarvis, Mike Tapp and any other veterans representing the Labour government can look at themselves in the mirror. Have they no shame? He's mentioned three ministers there who are all veterans: Mike Tapp, Al Cairns and Dan Jarvis. And Dan Jarvis and Al Cairns, well, Dan Jarvis is the Security Minister, Mike Tapp a Home Office Minister, and Al Cairns is actually in the Ministry of Defence, a highly decorated veteran himself. Yvonne in Somerset, she's got back in touch about what we spoke about earlier. She says, thank you for your response to my message. I understand your sentiments, but I think the harm that has been brought on communities far outweighs hotel owners being given an opportunity of a better life at the expense of the catastrophic impact these hotels have had on local communities. Yvonne, I'm totally with you. I absolutely agree with every single word of that, but I would just question, not you necessarily, but just this notion, you know, if you were told you've got a guaranteed income with these asylum seekers in your business, you've maybe struggled in recent years because of the problems in the economy, COVID lockdowns, you maybe run a business that washes its face but maybe doesn't make you a huge amount of money, and you're offered that opportunity. You're absolutely right in that the government shouldn't be doing this, but I do think it is a bit of a moral dilemma, and I have a lot of admiration for lots of reasons, but particularly on this one for the small hotel owner who I know who turned it down twice. So Yvonne, very happy to read out your message, your second message there, and thank you for sending it in. We'll talk to the Mayor of Crowborough in just a second about what is happening there. Lots of people getting in touch about Crowborough and the asylum seekers who are staying there. As promised, we'll talk to Colonel Simon Diggins as well about what's happening with the veterans. Stay with us here on Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good evening, this is Talk Drive. I'm Peter Cardwell. Thank you so much for your company this evening. There's so much to talk about. We're going to go live to Crowborough in just a second to find out what the Mayor thinks of this new facility being opened. Well, it's a former army facility, a barracks that is being opened now to asylum seekers. There are going to be over 500 of them, single men. Lots of people very annoyed about that. There have been protests over the last number of weeks, so we'll talk about that. We'll also talk, as promised, to Colonel Simon Diggins, my favourite defence and security analyst. He will be talking about Trump and Ukraine and the Board of Peace, but also about this story, which is absolutely infuriating so many of our viewers and listeners. We have loads of people who are veterans, who are from military families, or who just care about our veterans, and they are people very annoyed with Labour's Troubles Bill. We'll get the latest from Simon on all of that. We'll talk about, believe it or not, Victoria Beckham as well. She is at number 1 in the iTunes chart after a fan campaign backing her in the Brooklyn feud. Yes, really. Felicity Cross will give us the latest on all of that. We'll get the sport this hour too as well, and we're going to chat a little bit later on to Matt Vickers, the Shadow Home Office Minister. I wonder what he makes of what Robert Jenrick has been saying about splitting up the Home Office to try to deal with migration better. There are just really not very many, 65 civil servants whose job it is to track down more than 53,000 illegal migrants. I would imagine that will be a very tough job at the best of times, but if you're only 65 civil servants doing it, well, what is actually going to be the positive outcome of all of that? Thank you to Dawn in Chelmsford as well, who sent the most random message of the day. He says, if any politician has better manicured eyebrows than Andy Burnham, I have yet to see them. Their upkeep must be expensive. Dawn, thank you for that. Andy Burnham, of course, thinking perhaps about standing as an MP in a forthcoming by-election. We'll talk about that too. Loads to discuss. I want to discuss it with you. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me at 72222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. Send me a voice note, send me a WhatsApp text message, or give me a ring, all on the main number 0344 499 1000. Loads to discuss between now and 7 o'clock here on Talk Drive. Well, just a very affecting message that I just want to read here just before we get into this from Alan. He says, we live close to Crowborough, Ashdown Forest and its heathlands, which in turn is right next to the proposed illegal migrant camp. The whole area will essentially become unsafe for female dog walkers and any other female who wishes to take a walk around the area when these men take up residence, given what we all know about their values and beliefs. That's despite the best efforts of the police and government to cover up the crimes they're committing. I mean, Alan's right in that we don't know about these specific men in Crowborough, but we do know that there are many, many hotels, many facilities like this where there just have been a number of sexual crimes. They factually have happened. So Alan's absolutely right. As a former Royal Marine, it boils my blood to see what this country has become. I, for one, would never answer the call to serve this country under its current leadership. I mean, that just makes me very sad that Alan feels that way, and he has given so much to this country. We'll talk about the story affecting veterans in just a few minutes as well. But first of all, I just want to remind ourselves about what Samara Gill found, our reporter here on Talk. She was in Crowborough earlier today. Just set the scene for us.
I've been speaking with people who are absolutely enraged. Property prices, they think, have just plummeted in their local area. There's someone who's got an actual patch of land that is right where the barracks are, and they can already see men loitering. They're worried about the safety of their women and girls. This is a town that has been absolutely sort of plunged into mayhem because of the government's choices. Now, Shabana Mahmood has obviously said that this is a good thing because she wants to get migrants out of hotels. That's the whole Labour edict, is that they want to get migrants out of hotels and into army facilities that are a little bit less cushy and luxury. But the effect is still same on the communities. There are still men being placed into communities which we know nothing about. So I think the root cause, it has not been solved, and there are plenty of people out here that I'm just looking at behind me that are fearing at the moment and feeling like their town is a little more unsafe today.
Samara Gill there reporting from Crewborough a little bit earlier on. Natalie Whittle is a councillor in the area. The training camp is within her constituency, St John's Ward in Crewborough. She's the Mayor of Crewborough as well. Natalie, thank you for joining me today. What's your reaction to what the government has done here?
Really, really very disappointed. We are absolutely dismayed by the lack of communication from the Home Office. I have to take issue with you, if I may, firstly, but just say it's not a barracks, it's an army training camp.
Okay,
They're
sure.
two very different things.
Happy to clarify that.
Yeah, it's significant because it isn't a barracks. It isn't designed to hold people on a long-term basis in any way, shape or form. The site has been used by our cadets, our air cadets and army cadets, and they are not able to access the site. And this is a real loss to our community.
Well, and there's been many protests that have happened. Many people, and not just people you might expect. There's been lots of people. I was speaking to a council colleague of yours earlier, talking about people in care homes, for example, waving and showing their approval. Mothers pushing people and pushing babies in prams who've been out protesting about this. Do you feel the government has listened to you at all?
No, I don't. Andrew sits on the district council. I'm a town councillor.
Okay. Again, happy to clarify that. Apologies.
Sorry, it's okay. It's just that it's a different level, and Wealdon are a higher authority than us.
Okay.
Although we're here, we have boots on the ground. We live and breathe it every day. Andrew obviously does live within the town as well, but we see what's going on, and it is that people are concerned. I live within the ward that covers the army camp as well, and there are real, genuine concerns. There are concerns simply about 600 or so men that are young and have nothing to do, and this is a small town. It's just not a sustainable option.
What changes do you think people are going to have to make to their lives because of this? They're clearly going to have to, they feel they're going to have to be a lot more vigilant. They've seen a lot of the stories that have happened in other areas where large groups of men have been. There have been quite a number of stories, we've covered some of them here on Talk Drive, about migrants in these facilities that, or even in hotels, who have committed sexual crimes, other assaults and so on. There must be real fear about that.
There are real concerns, and I'm not going to second guess how my friends and neighbours are going to react to this. But we are concerned, and it's, as much as anything else, it's the lack of information. It is the underhand way, the middle of the night moves, the failure to engage with families that live very close, right on the doorstep of this facility. Just to, if it is something that they can reassure, they should be doing that, but they're not. They're making it secret, and that makes more fear. If you aren't given knowledge, you become fearful. And they are not providing us with any information.
Is there anything the Home Office that could have done that would have reassured you about this, or was it always going to be something people were incredibly sceptical and worried about, do you think? Is there any middle ground in this, Natalie?
I think the size of the numbers that could well pass through our community is ridiculous, and it is beyond understanding why they feel that a small inland Sussex town is the appropriate place for what could be thousands of men over the time of the camp coming through our community. And what we want is a reassurance that this really is only going to be for a year. This is now, it's happening, but they have suggested that it will only be a year, and that's what we need to know. No more mealy words. Be honest, be truthful about us. Let us manage our expectations, but we want that site back for our cadets, and we want to get back to normal.
I just want to read you a little bit about what the Home Office is saying today and get your reaction, Natalie. They say more than 400 hotels were opened under the last government at a cost of £9 million a day. Now just under 200 hotels remain in use, with overall asylum costs down 15%, saving over £500 million in hotel spending last year as we deliver our commitment to close every hotel. Robust safety and public protection safeguards are in place at Crowborough. Specialist security are on site 24/7 with CCTV and strict sign-in procedures for residents. All asylum seekers will have been screened against policing, criminality and immigration databases and will have completed initial health checks before arriving. What do you make of that, Natalie?
I think that there are going to be 600 bored young men with nothing to do in the middle of Sussex. That strikes me as a recipe for disaster.
And when Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, says illegal migration has been placing immense pressure on communities, that is why we are removing the incentives that draw illegal migrants to Britain, closing asylum hotels that are blighting communities. Crowborough is just the start. I will bring forward site after site until every asylum hotel is closed and returned to local communities. I will not rest until order and control to our borders is restored. She's saying she's not going to rest, she's going to bring forward site after site. You're just the start. What advice would you give to other communities? There'll be lots of people around the country perhaps worried that this may happen to their community. What would you say to them in terms of the experience that you have had, Natalie?
Yeah, look, as the town council, as I said, we're not a statutory consultee, but we have tried desperately hard to talk to everyone, and they have been singularly blocked by a lack of information from the Home Office. The Home Office should engage more honestly, really understand the situation of the communities. This is such a poor choice of site. Crowborough is a welcoming, kind town. We have embraced communities of refugees. We have Ukrainians. When the Afghani families passed through our community, they were welcomed and supported. But it's just the sheer volume and lack of information that I think is driving concerns.
Natalie, I just wonder, in regard to Crowborough itself, what is the character of the place like? You're clearly worried that's going to change. When people look at a good place to live, they look at house prices, they look at the facilities that are there, GPs facilities, for example. Well, these men aren't going to be going to schools, but clearly schools in the area too. That sort of infrastructure aspect of things is bound to be a concern too.
Yeah, I mean, the one that you mentioned there that I'm most concerned about, of course, is the surgeries and access to medical provision.
Yeah.
You know, we have a minor injuries unit at our local hospital that has been shut on short-term basis on an ad hoc provision. It's about 40 minutes to an A&E if you're stuck in traffic. Doctor surgery, as they are throughout the country, are oversubscribed and it's difficult to find an appointment. Those kind of stretches on resources cause conflict if there is felt that some people are jumping a queue, and that's not helpful. That's not going to encourage an amicable situation.
Yeah.
And that's always an issue. Crowborough is a wonderful town. I raised my family here. I am born and bred Sussex. I love this community. That's why I'm doing this job, this role that I'm doing. It's because I really care about Crowborough.
Okay.
And it feels like higher authorities don't care about us, and that's really sad.
Natalie, thank you. Councillor Natalie Whittle there, the Mayor of Crowborough, an independent town councillor for St John's Ward, which is in the town, of course. Adam's in Sunderland, quite far away from Crowborough, but has plenty of views on it, as of course we all do. Adam, thanks for ringing 0344 499 1000. What would you like to say today?
It was, Peter, nice to talk to you. It was the mathematics of this all. Because they're talking about emptying the hotels and putting 500 people into an army base in Crowborough. Yet that many people arrive every day.
Yeah, I mean, this will help a little bit, as you correctly say, but when they go to this training camp, there's just going to be lots more where they have to come and be processed. Now, the processing, which the government wants to speed up, will take some of them out of the system. But as we know, about 75% of people who are processed are given asylum in this country. So there's still more people in this country at the end of it.
Yeah, and I just cannot understand the mathematics, because it just doesn't work out. Because then surely if you empty a hotel, say you took 500 people out of one hotel, put them in the army base, that hotel fills up the next day. But then you don't have another army base.
Yeah, well, that's. I mean, it'll be very interesting to see what happens and how quickly they can actually process those people and take them out of the system. Adam, interesting point there, and thank you for it. That was Adam in Sunderland. Very good to talk to you there. Steve's been in touch and says, I'm a former senior detective with a team of 5 other detectives, all retired, but over 130 years of detective experience. Why not seek to employ other former detectives to track down illegal migrants and bail absconders with performance-related bonuses as opposed to weak civil servants? Well, very interesting point there, Steve. I think that's a great idea. And this is the news that a team of 65 civil servants tasked with tracking down more than 53,000 illegal migrants. I mean, that's nearly one civil servant for nearly 1,000 people. How well is that job going to go? Do you really honestly think that someone sitting at Whitehall at a computer is going to say, all right, well, we've tracked down that person, we're necessarily going to make it through these thousands of people? Steve, I think you'd probably do a much better job. Nicola in Norfolk says it doesn't matter what type of accommodation illegal migrants are housed in, while they're allowed to wander at will among the community. Undocumented men of whom we know nothing should not be allowed to leave wherever they are placed, says Nicola. Jackie says Burnham comes across as personable and reasonable, but as the master of spin. He has more faces than a town hall clock. Richard and Corby, hi Cardi P. I had a major disagreement with Andrew Gwynn over his Brexit stance, and I said some things to Andrew I regret. On Twitter, he accepted my apology and it went no further. He's a decent man, and that's hard for me to say about a Labour politician, says Richard in Corby. Well, certainly some of those messages were absolutely horrendous. Some of them were anti-Semitic, some of them were really discriminatory against older people. So listen, I don't think Andrew Gwynn really, he put some things in those message forums which were well beyond banter, I would argue. I've known him for quite a number of years, and actually he was the shadow minister to one of the ministers I worked for when I was in government, and in person I've always found him absolutely fine. In fact, he's been helpful with a few things behind the scenes. So it was a very different Andrew Gwynn I saw in those messages. He is clearly having health difficulties, he's standing down. It'll be very interesting to see what happens politically, but I think he has been very affected by that scandal. It's up to you, of course, whether you have any sympathy for him or not. You may well say good riddance to bad rubbish, but behind every story, behind every scandal, there is always a human being and a person's family as well. We're going to talk in just a second about some of the families that have been affected by what the Labour government has done, what they voted for last night, the Troubles Bill. And this is something that is causing a lot of worry from a lot of people, veterans' families, people who are serving, people who have served previously, people who've been served in any sort of uniform serving our country, police people as well. I know a lot of them watch and listen to this programme, and we're going to get into this in just a second with Colonel Simon Diggins and see what the state of things now is. We're also going to talk about Trump, Ukraine and Greenland, because things have calmed down there very substantially over the past 24 hours. Simon Diggins will bring us through all of it in just a second. Stay with us.
Welcome to Down the Local, the show that goes from pub to pub across the country, speaking to the punters about the subjects driving us all nuts at the moment.
That's Rachel Reeves, Rachel Thieves, Rachel McCounts.
I don't really know Meghan Markle. I know Meghan Markle's from Suits, and that's about it.
I don't know about anyone else, and I don't know where this is going. I have 0% beard, and I feel
Raising the flag, I think, is symptomatic of its desperation.
Is public transport good value for money?
No, it isn't.
You really don't like speaking to people.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, thank you so much for all your messages. We'll get to more of them in just a second. Actually, just on cats, Bill in Southampton says, I've got 2 cats, Luna and Tick. Very good. They were as mad as kittens. Both have lovely, unique personalities. If we lost one, it would be like losing a member of the family. It would be devastating, says Bill in Southampton. Lots of people getting in touch on all of that. And Zarina says, we used to be such a trusting nation. Doors were left unlocked. We trusted one another. The national dialogue has to change and look to the past to regain our dignity. My beautiful dog was stolen from the garden many years ago. I still have nightmares about it. I never knew what became of him. He could not be used for breeding. He was too old and he had had the snip. It breaks my heart to think about what he may or may not have gone through. Zarina, my goodness, that is a really heartbreaking thing to hear. My cat, when I was a teenager, Clyde, she disappeared to die, as they often go away to die. She was very, very old, and we knew she'd gone away to die, and I don't know what happened to her. It's not quite the same. Of course, it's not as traumatic as what you've been through, but I've always wondered. Lots of people in touch about Crowborough as well. Craig in Tunbridge Wells says, I commute to and from work past the Crowborough Army training camp every day. I have not long passed the site and noticed there's a large police presence around the surrounding area today where there wasn't any before. There is currently a small group of people standing outside a new build site next door to the barracks entrance with the Union Jacks and the pouring rain surrounded by police officers. Well, lots of people in touch about that. We'll return to that. But another big story, you wanted to talk about it yesterday, you want to talk about it today, and this is my show, but it's your show too, and we will always be directed by you. I had a huge response. I know Samara Gill, our reporter, had a huge response. Yesterday she spoke to a load of veterans who were very worried. This is before Labour put through this Troubles bill. We'll get the detail on that from Simon Diggins in just a second, but let's just remind ourselves, Samara speaking to these veterans in Parliament Square outside the House of Commons yesterday.
As a lawyer, he should know all about fairness. This is not fair in the way that the government is treating Northern Ireland veterans. How can you prosecute veterans, people who are doing their job for the defence of our great nation, and yet all you do is drag us through the docks whilst you are protecting and giving immunity to IRA terrorists? It's wrong, it's not democracy, it's unfair, and we expect better from the British government. And Al Carnes, you should hang your head in shame.
Al Carnes, of course, one of the defence ministers who is behind this bill. Manda has been in touch. Says, my father-in-law was in Northern Ireland in the 70s, as well as many other postings. He's now 93, ridiculously fit for his age. Really glad to hear that, Manda. Should I forewarn him he may be getting a letter? How would I ever bring myself to do that? What a disgrace. And that, what Manda has said there, is absolutely crystallising what so many people are saying to me, especially on social media. I've had quite a response to this, and Colonel Simon Diggins knows all about it. He is Defence and Security Analyst, former Defence Attaché in Kabul, former Colonel in the UK Army, of course. Simon, loads of people really, really annoyed about this. What's your reaction?
Peter, good afternoon to you. I mean, I'm much the same. I'm also extremely annoyed about it. We all know that the whole history, the story, what happened to the Troubles is a very deep and very dark one. And lots of terrible things happened there. But the reality of life is as follows, that there were 3,400 people killed there. Over 3,000 were killed by terrorists, the majority of those by Republican terrorists. There is no way we're going to get the truth about what happened with those individuals. And even in the past, where there have been stories about people being kidnapped and disappeared, the IRA or IRA Sinn Féin have been remarkably reluctant to provide information, even at the cost of helping people to find some kind of closure. The only people who will be prosecuted as a result of this change in the law, which the government is bringing in, will be British Army veterans and some other security force personnel. And that's simply wrong. As your correspondent noted, the gentleman from the Marine who spoke outside Parliament, this is basically inequitable. One of the fundamental principles of justice in this country is equity, and that recognises that sometimes it's hard to go after particular individuals, but because you can't go after everybody. And that's really what's so wrong about this. Nobody is scared of the truth. Nobody in the British military is scared of the truth. Nobody's scared of finding out what happened, and we are always very open to acknowledging when things have gone wrong. But that's not what's going to happen as a result of this bill. Instead, we're going to have 800 plus veterans plus being investigated, and as someone said to me once, the punishment's not necessarily the punishment, it's the process which is the punishment. It's simply this can drag on for 2 to 3, 4, even 5 years. And all that time, you've got somebody who is old, who is vulnerable, worried about what's going to happen next to them as well. And then let alone the arguments being put forward by, rightly, by other senior military officers. How does that help people in the future, our future current soldiers and our future soldiers.
But Simon, you of course have a great record. You've many accolades to your name. You were promoted to colonel. There are so many people who did that, who were served with great bravery and distinction in Northern Ireland. About 300,000 people over the course of 30 years of the Troubles Operation Banner. I do wonder. I mean, there will be some who fell below the standards, who did things they weren't meant to do. There were cover-ups. Bloody Sunday was one of them, for example. There have been times when the Royal Military Police didn't investigate properly at the time. If I were in a position, I'm not thankfully, but if I were in a position where an army officer or a soldier had done something they shouldn't have done, if had they broken the law, I'd still want justice today. What would you say to those people?
Firstly, I would agree with them. I mean, the issue is not hiding things that went wrong. And I absolutely take the point that one of the challenges we've got at the moment is not the whole story comes out about various things. We saw that nonsense recently with Operation Verona, which was the investigation into the links with the man who turned out to be nicknamed Steak Knife. Who was the head of the IRA's nutting squad. The bizarre thing about that was MI5 refused to allow the direct linkage, even though it'd been in the papers, and he was named as an individual, and everything went there, and we still play those silly games. They do not help. And I absolutely get the concerns of those who have lost their loved ones and who feel that the military have been hiding things. Let's get rid of all that nonsense. Let's be honest about what happened in Northern Ireland. But if you're going to be honest about it, it's going to be honest to everybody. And I said the real concern is that we're not going to get that balance of honesty across the piece. Instead, we're going to have effectively politically motivated prosecutions of service personnel, many of whom are very much older than the average population now. They're veterans, and they're veterans, of 70, 80, even 90 years old, and they're the ones who can be prosecuted. And I think that's simply wrong.
What should be done to remember, to draw a line under the past, to move on from this? Because there was so much that was worked out, that was settled, that was dealt with the Belfast Agreement, and I grew up in peace in Northern Ireland as a result of that agreement. And that agreement would never have happened were it not for the great work that the vast majority of people in uniform in the army, the police, the security services, the ambulance, fire did in Northern Ireland. I just wonder, 28 years on, this still hasn't been solved. There's still controversy over this particular bit, how we remember it, how we get truth and justice. What would you do, Simon? How do you think this should be dealt with?
Well, I think the first thing is, as we just discussed, we need to have more truth and honesty, but across the piece. So allegations of collusion that took place, they need to be properly investigated, and that's collusion on all sides. I mean, one of the accusations is that elements of the Garda Síochána colluded with members of the IRA. Let's have that out in the open, and everything goes there.
As the Smithwick Tribunal showed, absolutely, Simon.
Absolutely. But the other thing that we need to have, I think, is we need to have an honest conversation with ourselves about what it's going to take to build peace for the future. I mean, I remember the Good Friday Agreement, and it's one of the happiest days of my life. That and the collapse of the Berlin Wall, really, they were really important days in my life. I thought actually my service is worthwhile. Let's try and get some of that spirit back and explain to people, actually, yes, you can keep delving away at this, and of course we can have the truth out there, but let's recognise what the greater A game is going to be, and that's about achieving a kind of peaceful, sustainable peace for the whole of Ireland, the people of Northern Ireland in particular, but all those who suffered, and that, I think, we've lost that sense of why we need to...
I agree with that, absolutely, Simon. We're going to continue talking about this right throughout the programme. If you do want to put your points across, if you are a veteran or just care about this issue, 0344 499 1000. Simon, I want to just reflect as well on what Donald Trump has been saying. Earlier today, the President of the United States spoke about ending the war in Ukraine. This is what he said.
We've settled 8 wars, and I believe another one's coming pretty soon. You know what that is? The one that I thought was going to be an easy one has turned out to be probably the most difficult. Last month, 29,000 people died, mostly soldiers, in Ukraine, Russia. Think of that, 29,000, 27,000 in the month before, 26,000 in the month before that. It's terrible. But we have meetings and we think we're making a lot of progress.
Donald Trump there is speaking about Ukraine. What do you make of his views on that, Simon, and the fact that the Greenland issue seems to have pretty much gone away? Just go through those two issues for us and give us your analysis of them, if you would.
I think the first thing I'd say is that one of the difficulties we've got with Donald Trump is that we lack consistency. So you never know what's high on his list and what's not high on his list at the moment. The Greenland issue appears to be part temporarily, and I think he's beginning to recognise that the very legitimate needs the United States has in terms of security in the High North, which of course is also security of NATO, can be met entirely throughout the current arrangements, either with NATO or with the Kingdom of Denmark, who owns it. I think that message may simply have got through. Though we've also seen the rather provocative AI images that he put out on Truth Social. But maybe, just maybe, that is beginning to get to some resolution. Similarly with Ukraine, and it's good that he acknowledged it, because you'll recall that he talked about having peace in 24 hours when he was most bullish just after he'd been elected, and that was his boast that he was saying from there. And we're told now that there's like 95% of the deals in place, but the missing 5% is actually Russia stopping the war. Russia is the aggressor, and Russia has got to stop the war. And I think that's the bit that we're missing. Where is his leverage on that? He's invited Putin, he's invited Lukashenko for Belarus to join his so-called border peace. Well, let's have a start from them, please. Stop your fighting, stop your aggression. And I think
show us your commitment to peace. Yeah,
absolutely, absolutely.
Simon, as always, thank you. That's Colonel Simon Diggins there, Defence and Security Analyst, with us. Thank you for your contribution. Thanks to everybody who's been in touch, including Neil, who says, as a former Northern Ireland veteran, I'm disgusted. We cannot lock up or deport child rapists, but this communist government wants to hunt and imprison people who were prepared to die for this country. I'm disgusted, says Neil in the Labour-obliterated UK. Blake in Wigan says, as someone from the northwest, having seen our towns and cities absolutely decimated by illegal migrants, all I can say to the people of Crowborough is welcome to the party, pal, says Blake. Joanna in Salisbury says, hi Cardi P. Hi Joanna. Labour are very good at sleight of hand when it comes to finances. For example, the Chagos Islands is going to be paid for the defence budget. There are lots of migrants being put up in refurbished military barracks and camps. Are they taking financing the refurbishment of the old military barracks and camps from the defence budget? The reason I ask is because a lot of the contracts for defence have been cancelled, yet they've increased the defence budget. Tracy in Wakefield says, hi Peter, the Home Office saying there is a professional security at Crowborough. We all know they're there to keep people out. They're there to keep people out, not to keep people safe. If this government is lying again. Brian F. up north says, surely there has to be a curfew put on the new guests at Crowborough. They cannot be allowed to wander aimlessly around the town. I'm sure there's plenty of areas within the grounds of exercises needed. John Roberts from Germany says, surely there should be a law in place that either the local or national government should be legally responsible for any crimes committed by any illegal immigrants placed in public spaces. Until this issue starts affecting people in power, nothing will be done. That is John's view. Reg in Southampton says, great show as always. Thank you very much indeed. Reg, I belong to a group called Southampton Patriots, and we regularly protest outside a migrant hotel in Southampton. I feel for the residents of Crowborough on hearing that the first batch of unknowns were delivered in the early hours of this morning. Unfortunately, your problems have just begun. I'm sorry to hear that, says Reg. And just finally, before the break, Craig says, I believe the government should make a budget for migrants awaiting processing. Then, whether they're in houses, army camps or hotels, it wouldn't matter. We would have a clear picture of exactly what it is costing us. But I guess they don't want that transparency. That is what Craig says. Lots more comments coming your way. And yes, we are actually going to talk about Posh Spice in a minute or two. Lady Beckham to you, of course. Her song has soared to #1 on iTunes. This family drama has continued and caught the imagination of many people. So we will be finding out whether Brooklyn Beckham is to blame for all this in Felicity Cross's imagination. In her view, she's Deputy TV Editor of The Sun, or whether it's Victoria Beckham who's not such an innocent girl. Stay with us.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
Well, thank you so much to everybody who's been in touch. We've been talking about a lot of serious topics, and you know, this next one is very serious for the Beckham family. But believe it or not, Victoria Beckham has soared to #1 in the iTunes chart after a fan campaign backing her in Brooklyn in the feud against Brooklyn. This is the song. We're going to play a little bit of it now. It's called "Not Such an Innocent Girl," and it has gone to #1. Can we hear a little bit of that? I mean, it's been a while since that has been a pop song, but it's come back into vogue. Felicity Cross is with me, the deputy TV editor of The Sun. Were you surprised this has happened, Felicity?
No, because we are not a serious country, are we? We respond
in so many ways.
We just respond to anything with any sort of ridiculous response, thanks to the internet, of course. So we decided the proper British response to this huge World War III in the Beckham camp was to get Victoria to #1. So Not Such an Innocent Girl, it hit #6 back in 2001, but everyone decided the right thing to do was have her at the top of the charts.
Is it right to say that she's the only Spice Girl to not have, before today or the last couple of days, a #1 hit as a single by herself?
Yeah, absolutely right, which is a travesty. You've just heard the song, you've seen the pop video. So,
it's not great, is it? I mean, I was always quite a big fan of Mel C. I mean, she's a great singer, and she's had a number of great hits, and still to this day is a singer. I mean, Posh Spice, Lady Beckham, to you, obviously, is someone who has really made quite a career of being not that good a musician.
Yeah, but do you need it when you're so good at brand and PR and all that kind of thing? She's one of these people in the showbiz world who just manages to keep herself relevant through anything and everything.
Yeah.
And the money doesn't help. It doesn't, it keeps her at the top, doesn't she? Are you on Team Brooklyn? Or are you in Team Victoria? What do you think of this big scandal that so many people are talking about, that Brooklyn Beckham putting out these messages on Instagram talking about this civil war in his family? Yeah, well, exactly. Like, they're our royal family, aren't they, in a way, in the showbiz world? I mean, we all
he's
remember...
very Harry-esque in quite a number of ways, isn't he, old Brooklyn?
Well, exactly. We all remember when Brooklyn was born, don't we? It was huge news. I think I am Team Beckham, I have to say. I think when you look at a family that's been torn apart like this, you have to think, would he be doing this if he didn't have the financial backing of the Peltzers now? It's easy for him to turn his back on them. Looking at Harry and Meghan, they had the similar situation. We do actually have a poll running with our Sun readers.
Tell us about that. What do Sun readers think?
So I just checked in, and 29% are Team Brooklyn and 46% are Team Beckham.
Okay, and there are others who don't know, or what's
on the fence.
On the fence, okay.
But interestingly, the poll for should Brooklyn release the wedding video has hit 75%.
We all want to see the video of Victoria Beckham dancing. That is just, no matter what side of the argument you're on here, that video must be released.
Well, and also it would clear up the argument, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Because as we've been saying, Beck-elections vary.
Beck-elections may vary.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
So his version is she hijacked the wedding dance. We now know that she was grinding and nuzzling are the two words we've been
her
told.
Son.
Apparently so.
That's weird.
But there's people who say that wasn't the case.
Right.
And this tape would clear it all up, and we could maybe move on with our day.
I'll never move on. There have been other examples, of course, of people who just happen to be in the news and then their music suddenly becomes trendy again. I mean, we know, of course, that there's a lot of different versions of things like Do They Know It's Christmas, for example, that come back. But when someone is in the news for whatever reason, sometimes their music comes back. Have you seen this phenomenon before?
Yeah, absolutely. One that I always enjoyed was when the real pushback against the X Factor domination.
Yes.
And I think we got Rage Against the Machine to #1 for Christmas.
That's right, yeah.
The power of the people at the end of the day. But I'm sure Victoria will find it all funny.
Kate Bush with Stranger Things as well.
Exactly.
Too, yeah.
I tell you who is a fan, though, of Not Such an Innocent Girl. Cruz Beckham.
Really?
So he's finding the whole thing hilarious, and he keeps tagging that song on his Instagram stories today.
Okay.
he's just poking the bear, isn't he? Which I love.
Certainly. I mean, there's plenty for you to write about and for, I mean, there must be huge interest from your readers of The Sun in this, especially because they love showbiz news.
Well, I think this is the thing. However highbrow you think you are, however much you engage in showbiz gossip, we all know about the Beckhams, sports fans, pop fans, and something like this to happen to a family, we've all had shades of that ourselves, so we're all invested in one way or another.
Do you think there's any way back in this when you have such a big feud, when you have such a public argument for such a family that, you know, from day one has been public? I mean, before Brooklyn Beckham was even a baby, we knew where he'd been conceived, we knew about all the different details of him. He had that deal, was it in one of the big magazines, Vanity Fair, one of those who 6 months after his birth he was already a celebrity before he'd even learned to talk.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what we're hearing is that Victoria and David, it's very much going to be a dignified silence, crack on. Certainly there's been very much, you know, business as usual on Instagram, which seems to be the battlefield here.
Okay.
Victoria's been wishing Emma Bunton a happy birthday. So all of that normal business. David was at a UNICEF campaign speaking about social media.
Even in Davos, yeah, exactly. And he did say he talked to his children about use of social media.
Yeah, he said children can make mistakes and we need to let them do that. And I think that's all we're going to get from Camp Beckham.
Right.
In terms of a way back, it doesn't look like it at the moment, and certainly some people are saying it would only be if he sadly ended up breaking up from Nicola and their marriage broke down, and no one wants to see that happen. But look, time heals wounds, and there might be something that brings them back together. But
well, Ian has been in touch and says, will there be a Beckham Peace Summit in Reykjavik? Maybe Bono could be invited, maybe Bono could find a way through. Betty's been in touch and says, smells like poor David Beckham had to buy 10,000 copies of a rubbish song last night. Classic professional media response. I do love that story, probably apocryphal, of when, was it Louis Walsh was managing Boyzone and they got a little bit above themselves and said, aren't we wonderful, and we're at number one and everyone's buying our songs, and then he opened the boot of his car and there were just loads and loads of singles and he said, this is why you're at number one, because I keep buying these and keeping you up there. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens. But it has been such a controlled family. The narrative has been very controlled. The bigger you get and the more people you have around you, the more difficult it is for journalists like you to get to the principals, as they call them, because they have this sort of army of press people around them. And of course Brooklyn Beckham does too.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, and one of the things that Brooklyn said in his blistering 6 pages on Instagram was that that he felt that his parents' camp had been briefing the press against them and that kind of thing. And I think the thing to say in all of these showbiz stories is there's always going to be briefing, but what we try and do is be very fair to both sides, because we never want to be pushing someone's agenda or that kind of thing. And I think that, like I say here,
if I get caught up in a celebrity scandal, I'd like you to push my agenda. Could you do that? Is that okay?
I mean, I'm sure we can talk about it.
I think the likelihood of me being caught up in a celebrity scandal is pretty minimal. What happens next, Felicity?
Well, this is the thing, nobody really knows, because it's going to rumble and rumble, we think. Certainly we've just seen pictures of Brooklyn and Nicola out for the first time. They're walking their dog in Malibu where they've holed up, and they look blissfully happy. Now these things are always a little bit strategic, aren't they? I think they're both smiling and looking at peace, but I mean, obviously behind closed doors there's probably been a lot of tears on both sides, hasn't there?
I'd say they probably have. Felicity, thanks for that update. That's Felicity Cross, their Deputy TV Editor at The Sun. What do you make of this? There's quite a number of people getting in touch. Actually, Nick says, as someone who emigrated to Iceland last year, I have to tell your listeners, life doesn't have to be so miserable as it is in Britain. Iceland is cold, but the roads are like billiard tables. There's zero litter and graffiti, there are no migrants, and best of all, I'm hundreds of miles away from Keir Starmer and the Beckhams. So there we are. Thank you. I've been to Reykjavik, actually. I went with my mother, and I promise you, I took a photo, put it on Facebook, and put underneath it, Mum's gone to Iceland. So there we are. Lots more to discuss, including the sport. Sean Custis will be with us after the break. Stay with us.
Why are our politicians crucifying our veterans? I am so angry. I am so furious. None of them have ever carried a rifle. What's next? Afghan? Iraq? Eh? No shame on these people. Disgrace.
These are men and women who put their lives on the line for our country, and we've got a government who thinks it would be a good idea to prosecute them. This is the same party that's gladly going to sit around the table with Jerry Adams and IRA leaders who blew to smithereens people's lives, their homes and their businesses for many, many years.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thanks to Dave in Lincolnshire, who says, what will it take for the heads of MI5, MI6 and the armed forces to come out and say they have no confidence in this government to protect the people and nation? Decisions on the Chinese embassy, the Ukraine Chagos and the prosecuting soldiers is appalling. They need to go. Well, we'll get back to all those issues in a few minutes' time, but I want to talk about the sport now with Sean Costas, the Director of Sport for The Sun. Hi, Sean, you well?
Oh, Peter, yes, very good. Glad to see you still talking about the Beckham story. Serious journos like yourself must love all that.
What's your update on the Beckhams? Has your view changed in any way?
No.
Have you been buying Not Such an Innocent Girl on iTunes?
I think that's a great story, isn't it? Isn't it? Every cloud gets a silver line somewhere. I do find it funny that David was in Davos, so maybe you could have peace talks.
Well, it was your world and my world coming together. You know, maybe who would you get to chair the peace talks? Maybe
Donald Trump. Board of Peace.
Yeah, that's it. On the Board of Peace. Absolutely. I think Bono should do it because he knows both the global.
I thought that was a good idea.
Yeah,
Bono's your man. Yes, there is sport.
there is sport. Lots of transfer news. Clubs looking at finalising their squads for the end of the season. But what is happening at Manchester United?
Yeah, well, Casemiro, it's been announced today he will be leaving Manchester United. Now, Casemiro, it was a major figure when he signed for United, leaving Real Madrid, a five-time Champions League winner at Real Madrid, Brazilian superstar coming to United. Possibly didn't fulfill what Man United fans wanted, but then he came at the difficult time when Man United were really on the slide. He's had criticism, but he's had good times as well. He scored in the Carabao Cup final to help Man United win the cup. He's won an FA Cup. He's played over 100 games for United. He is the Brazil captain as well, so he's going to the World Cup probably as Brazil's captain. Carlo Ancelotti likes him, so you might look at it on the surface and think Man United are losing a major player here.
Yeah.
But a lot of people feel that, you know, he's not really what he was. And did you ever sign prime Casemiro anyway? Probably not, because Real Madrid wouldn't have been getting rid of him if he had been in his prime. But there's no doubt in his career he's been a formidable player. Now, Man United did have an option to extend his deal for a year, but he's on £300,000 a week. You're not
almost as much as you.
You're not going to. I didn't dispute that, but it is. Yes, he has. You know, he's had a great career there, but you don't want to be paying him that for another year. Probably you need some younger legs in there. Man United have to cut their costs. They haven't been in Europe this season, so there's issues with PSR, etc. And they do need to rebuild to a certain extent. Yeah. So it makes a lot of sense for everybody. Casemiro gave it all the usual stuff like, you know, I'll always be a Man United man and all that stuff. But I think everybody understands that the end of this summer is the right time to go, and for him to go to the World Cup and enjoy himself. No idea where he's going to sign for after that, but he's probably not over-fussed about that right now.
I'm sure you'll tell us when we know. What is going on at Liverpool as well? They have interest in a Spurs defender.
It's not so much Liverpool. There's interest from Liverpool in Tottenham's defender Mickey van der Ven, who is probably the quickest centre-back in the Premier League, really speedy. Now, yes, Tottenham don't have the best defensive record, but when van der Ven plays, you tend to feel a bit more assurance with him there because he's so fast. He is prone to injury from time to time. He has injury issues this season, but in a team like Liverpool, goodness me, playing maybe alongside Van Dijk, he would be some player, but he's contracted to Spurs, I think, to 2029, and is a major player for them. Thomas Frank was talking today, the beleaguered Thomas Frank, as we always call him, saying that Van der Ven's, you know, the future of Spurs. But a player like Van der Ven is probably looking at Spurs thinking, not sure I'm going to win anything here. Probably a good idea if I can leave to go but it's going to be very hard for Liverpool to get them out. They're talking £100 million plus.
Right.
That's a lot of money. I'm talking about some very big money in this.
Well, you certainly are. Chelsea are a team that have a lot of money. They're looking to beef up their midfield. Who are they looking at?
Are they really beefing up their midfield with this one? This is a guy called Douglas Luiz. Now, he was a very good player for Aston Villa, to such a point that Juventus decided to sign him for £50 million. He's another one who's hoping to be, he is hoping to be in the Brazil squad. Casemiro will be. He's hoping to be in the Brazil squad. Didn't really work out at Juventus. Come back, been at Nottingham Forest on loan, but not really starting games. It's a bit of a surprise Chelsea are in them, but they do need to bolster midfield. There's a feeling perhaps Cole Palmer, his injuries, he's not over them yet. Now, while he's not a midfielder, he's more an attacker. Enzo Fernandez might push forward, meaning they'll need another player in as cover in central midfield. You're nodding at me, Peter, saying, yes, I realise that. You've got to be tactically, that would make a lot of sense.
It's a tactical nod.
Yeah. But Douglas Luiz is not, it doesn't seem he was the player he was at Aston Villa, but I can understand Chelsea's need for reinforcements. And relatively speaking for Chelsea, this is a cheap deal. This is not the sort of deal Chelsea usually do. It's not a £100 million, 8-year contract, etc. This is quite low-key for them.
Okay.
But it might make a bit of sense.
Very interesting stuff. Sean, thank you. Sean Custis is the Director of Sport at The Sun. Brought us up to date with all the big stories there. You can read all about them, of course, in your copy of The Sun tomorrow and at thesun.co.uk/sport. Back to politics. I just want to remind ourselves what Keir Starmer has been saying about the situation with Greenland and Donald Trump. That's calmed down to a huge degree now, and Keir Starmer are keen to let us believe, at least, that he has some role in all of that. Let's have a look at what the Prime Minister has been saying.
You may have seen, but it is a good thing, that yesterday the threat of tariffs against the United Kingdom was lifted, and now we can start the hard yards of finding a way forward on security in the Arctic, which may seem a long way away, pretty remote, but actually does matter to all of us in terms of the safety and security of our country. And we've got through the last few days with a mix of British pragmatism, common sense, but also that British sense of sticking to our values and our principles. But now, as I say, the hard yards of actually finding a better way for security for our country, for Europe and across the globe.
What do you make of what the Prime Minister said there? Let me know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. You may know, of course, that the Prime Minister is a cat man. He has 2 cats, Jojo and Prince. He was interviewed about it for a recent book. Debs has been in touch on this delivery driver who stole the cat. This is what Debs thinks in her voice note.
Oh my God, am I actually watching this? Someone actually stole someone's cat. I'd be devastated. I hope they've nailed him. Really? What goes through people's minds? Anyway, keep up the good work. Great show. Awesome. You being on Drive Time and also the weekends.
Thanks, Debs. I was shocked by the story too. So was Kelvin.
A neighbour of mine, I lived next door to back in about 15, 20 years ago. He had a cat, loved it to bits, used to see him walk up and down the road with it on his shoulder, and the kids used to go mad after it. One summer, it went missing, and it was right in the middle of the summer. And he was gutted. He put posters up. We looked everywhere for this cat. We couldn't find it. And if I tell you now, the day it turned up, you wouldn't believe it. But it returned home on Christmas Day in the morning, and it was scratching at the door. It was quite funny, but you should have seen the look on his face when he got his cat back.
Gosh, I'm sure he had absolute relief, and what an amazing Christmas present. Thank you for that, Kelvin. Loads of different stories today. We're talking about Crowborough, for example. We're talking about this bill that the government has put through on soldiers as well, prosecuting soldiers. Keith in Huddersfield has some thoughts on that as well, and he's given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Keith, what are your thoughts on what the government has done here?
Good evening, Pete.
Hi there.
Well, I actually rung up. I've watched a documentary 3 times now, and I asked, I'd just seen it. And if you haven't, could you look it up? It's all about Northern Ireland.
Yeah.
A documentary that was commissioned by the IRA. It's called Secret Army.
Okay, I'm writing this down.
I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
I think I have. Was that the controversial one recently and Martin McGuinness was in it?
Yes, that's
okay.
The one
Yeah, I've heard about it, but I haven't seen it. Where is it, Keith? Where is it on BBC or where is it?
I watched it on a programme that had films only on documentaries.
Okay,
only.
I'll look it up. I'm sure I'll be able to find it. Secret Army. Thank you. No, I'd been meaning to watch it. Now you've just reminded me. So thanks, Keith, for that.
Well, because you come from Northern Ireland,
yeah.
you'll understand it better than I will.
Not necessarily, Keith, but yeah. So what do you make of what the government has done?
It's absolutely atrocious. You got to remember these lads that went over there were in uniform. They were sitting targets. I mean, I come from Huddersfield, and I believe that our recruitment centre were blown up in Huddersfield by RAA. You know.
Yeah, there were lots that happened in GB certainly, and there are lots of victims. The Birmingham pub bombs, for example, the London Stock Exchange bombing. There are loads. Brighton, for example, loads of victims who weren't from Northern Ireland. Yeah.
The other thing I'd like to say quickly is, you said there were 65 people looking at trying to find out all these missing people.
Yeah, 53,000 illegal migrants. Yeah.
There's 500 going into a camp.
Mm-hmm.
We know no doors, no nothing, right? They'll be adding some of them to those that have gone missing.
Yeah.
Until they secure these barracks or whatever they want to call them, till they put fences around them, wherever they send them to, and keep them there. You'll always get them go missing, and you'll also get them going out and committing crime and chasing children, right? The answer to the problem is put them behind a fencing, patrolled.
It is certainly something an awful lot of people are worried about in Crowborough and elsewhere as well, because, Keith, we're in a situation where the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, has said, I will bring forward site after site until every asylum hotel is closed and returned to local communities.
But they're still in country, aren't they, Peter? They're still in country. You can put them anywhere you want. You can put them into houses. They're still there.
It's very true.
We don't want them here.
Yeah. And do you think Labour gets that message? Do they understand that, Keith?
Yeah, I think they do understand it, but it's not with what they believe in.
Yeah.
I honestly do. That makes it worse.
Yeah.
I want them out as a government, purely and simple because of how they've been handling things. Right? They're not good for this country. Great Britain will be better off without this Labour Party.
Okay.
And I voted Labour all my life. I've been a shop steward. I've been secretary of a union. Right. And I left them because of I wouldn't tow. They asked me to tow the line, and I wouldn't tow it. I told them the only line I was going to tow were those what elected me.
Well,
right.
Keith,
that
listen.
Finished me off.
Listen, thanks very much for telling us your experience there and on your thoughts on a number of different issues there. I'll put some of those points to Matt Vickers. He's coming up in a second. He's the Shadow Home Office Minister, also Conservative MP for Stockton West, what he thinks about that. And also what Robert Jenrick of Reform UK thinks about the Home Office. He says he'd break it up. He'd have a Department of Borders. What do you make of that? 0344 499 1000. So much to talk about in the next hour. We'll also talk about children starting school trying to swipe and tap books like phones. Yes, really. Stay with us.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a very good evening. This is Talk Drive. I'm Peter Cardwell. Thank you so much for your company. It's just gone 6 o'clock and there's an awful lot to talk about, including with Matt Vickers, the Shadow Home Office Minister, who's coming up in just a second. We're also going to talk about all those local elections that are postponed now, 29 different areas. That's confirmed. We'll find out what's in the sun too and get all your thoughts on Crowborough. Crowborough is a town that is really having a tough time at the moment because over 500 migrants are going to be there, male migrants. Lots of people very worried about that. We've had a reporter down on the scene. We'll talk about that and we'll take your calls, texts, tweets and voice notes about that too. Plenty of people want to talk about Andy Burnham too. Maybe he could become a Labour MP again, but having run for the leadership of the Labour Party twice and failed, would he get it a third time against Keir Starmer? Or maybe Keir Starmer maybe not standing. Lots of what ifs in UK politics at the moment, especially when global politics seems to be calming down a little bit now that Greenland seems to be sorted to Donald Trump's satisfaction, and unsurprisingly he's not going to do military action or have any tariffs, so we can all just calm down a little bit. As I said earlier this week, we probably should, because this is exactly what happens. It gets everybody riled up, everybody gets riled up, and then he pulls back and we all calm down a little bit. Lots to discuss, including Victoria Beckham's pop career. Philip has been in touch and says, "Afternoon, Peter. Brooklyn Beckham thinks he had it tough growing up. We had to listen to his mum sing." 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me at 72222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a voice note, less than a minute please, to 0344 499 1000. That's the number for WhatsApp text messages, and give me a ring on too. Loads to discuss between now and 7 o'clock. Stay with us here on Talk Drive. And I'll be back tomorrow on Talk Drive as well between 4 and 7. Kevin is doing Drive next week, but I'll be here tonight, of course, between 7 and 10. I'm back on the weekend shows from this weekend as well, Saturday and Sunday between 10 and 1, although actually a little bit earlier because of the football on Saturday, 10 until 12:30. So hope you can join me for the weekend shows. Lots of people have been in touch saying, "Where are you?" But I've been doing Drive. So I'll be doing the weekend shows from this weekend and the following weekend as well. And then we'll see what happens after that. Keeps us on our toes. Lots to discuss with Matt Vickers. He's the Shadow Home Office Minister, a Conservative MP for Stockton West too. Matt, good evening to you.
Good evening, Peter. Long time no see.
Yes, it's been at least a couple of weeks since I've interviewed you, so it's good to talk to you. We'll get to the really important matters, such as Victoria Beckham's pop career, a little bit later on, Matt. But maybe I could ask you about Greenland first, and the fact that we've just the small matter of avoiding World War III.
I think, do you know what? Whatever people, I mean, he's a polarising character, isn't he? He's a big character. He's one of life's characters. I think whatever people have to say about him, he does kind of get things done, doesn't he? He shakes things up a bit. Wrong to make the commitment, wrong to panic people to death, but actually things do seem to get done. You look at what happened in Gaza when he produced that weird AI video, and the end conclusion was that people, got their act together because they realised there was some guy who seemed a bit unhinged.
Do you think we should join the board of? Do you think we should join the board of peace, Matt?
I think it remains to be seen. I mean, the problem at the moment is we aren't really being very well represented in any sort of negotiation. When you look at what's gone on with Chagos, when you look at what's gone on, I mean, actually the Greenland issue was a big mess for our special relationship, wasn't it? All these things that Keir Starmer's going out there on the world stage and apparently representing us with all seem to end in disaster, whatever it might be. The Chagos situation, giving over our fishing rights, and there's huge costs to when that man goes abroad. It's not the flights and the accommodation. He gives away everything.
I think a lot of our viewers and listeners agree with you. I just want to talk to you about Crowborough, because I know you're a Shadow Home Office Minister, and our reporter Samara Gill was in Crowborough earlier today. This is what she found out.
I've been speaking with people who are absolutely enraged. Property prices, they think, have just plummeted in their local area. There's someone who's got a actual patch of land that is right where the barracks are, and they can already see men loitering. They're worried about the safety of their women and girls. This is a town that has been absolutely sort of plunged into mayhem because of the government's choices. Now, Shabana Mahmood has obviously said that this is a good thing because she wants to get migrants out of hotels. That's the whole Labour edict, is that they want to get migrants out of hotels and into army facilities that are a little bit less cushy and luxury. But the effect is still same on the communities. There are still men being placed into communities which we know nothing about. So I think the root cause, it has not been solved, and there are plenty of people out here that I'm just looking at behind me that are fearing at the moment and feeling like their town is a little more unsafe today.
Samara Gill reporting from Crowborough earlier. I spoke as well to one of the local councillors on the district council, Matt, who told me, an independent councillor, and he said that some parents in Crowborough are withdrawing their children from school as a bus route shares a stop with the military training camp there now housing migrants. And he says to sneak people in at 3:30 in the morning is an insult. What would you say to that?
I mean, it seems to have been completely mishandled. These people snuck in during the night. It hasn't been through any proper planning process. And this is a site that was being used to train 6,000 cadets. This is not some disused site in the middle of nowhere. It's a small town. It's on their doorstep. We've seen what happens with some of these sites when these asylum seekers are allowed to get out into public places. And I think people probably have the right to be fearful of what's going to go on there. The problem is that, of course, we don't want people to know. And in fact, the other fact that's come out now is the government can't confirm that it's any cheaper than putting people up in hotels anyway, and believe it's going to be of an equivalent cost. The reality is the last government got things wrong. Previous governments have got things completely wrong, but this government are going off the deep end with it. There's 50% more people arriving in this country on those boats now. They said they were going to end hotel use. Actually, before the election, the number in hotels had come down 49%. It was going in the right direction. If it had carried on that trajectory, we wouldn't have anyone in hotels now. The number has gone up since they came to office. And of those people arriving in this country illegally, less of them are now being removed. More arriving illegally, less of them being removed. It's all going the wrong way. The reality is there's only one way to deal with this. People have to know if they get into those boats, if they arrive in this country illegally, they will not be allowed to stay. People say I'm nasty when I say that. It's not nasty because it's inhumane. There's nothing humane about a system that sees people paying criminal gangs to smuggle them across the most dangerous.
Let me just read to you what the Home Office. Let me just read to you what the Home Office is saying about this. More than 400 hotels were opened under the last government at a cost of £9 million a day. Now just under 200 remain in use, with overall asylum costs down 15%, saving over £500 million in hotel spending last year as we deliver our commitment to close every hotel. Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, said illegal migration has been placing immense pressure on communities. That's why we are removing the incentives that draw illegal migrants to Britain, closing asylum hotels that are blighting communities. Crowborough is just the start. I will bring forward site after site until every asylum hotel is closed and returned to local communities. I will not rest until order and control to our borders is restored. I just wonder, I mean, there are plenty of people in Crowborough who don't think that an asylum hotel may not be blighting their community, but they'll believe that this training facility and the fact that there are 600 undocumented men will blight their community. I mean, surely the processing just has to be the focus here, that people need to be processed more quickly or alternatively sent back when they arrive, which I know is your policy.
Yeah, I mean, a hell of a spin there from the Home Office, I think. The use of statistics is fascinating. The number in hotels was coming down. You actually need, that's where you need to get to. It's all tinkering around the edges. The people who get in these boats cannot be allowed to stay. It's not about processing, it's about you've broken in. Whatever your case is, you do not arrive in this country illegally. Once we've got control of those borders, then you can look at who should and shouldn't be allowed to come. But it should not be an option for people to break in to the country. Those people in that community deserve a say. They deserve the decency of knowing that the place is safe. Because the other thing, I actually visited one of these sites, and it's not even just about people's concerns about security and safety. Part of it is about the impact on the local economy. In Altrincham, I met business people who've run restaurants, pubs, shops. People don't go shopping there anymore. The people who used to stay in the hotel that's now occupied by migrants were spending money in those pubs, supporting that community's local economy. There are huge costs to this, not only the cost for security, the costs to the economy, the cost pressures on local housing more generally as they're allowing these people in. If you break into this country, you shouldn't be able to stay. That's the concern.
There's another story today in The Sun saying that a team of just 65 civil servants has the task of tracking down more than 53,000 illegal migrants and foreign criminals who have gone on the run. We also have Robert Jenrick, your former colleague in the Conservative Party, defected to Reform UK exactly a week ago. He says the Home Office should be split up. There should be a Department of Borders. What do you think about that?
So Rob's a friend of mine, but I mean, I don't know whether anybody asked him why he didn't do it when he was a minister in the department.
Well, he couldn't have done it. It wouldn't have been his decision, and you know that. It would have been the Prime Minister's decision.
He was an immigration minister in the department. I never heard him say it at the time. He's actually a friend of mine, but I think any good journalist worth their salt should be asking him the question why he didn't have such a view at the time. I think the reality is
the next time I interview him, I will.
You get him asked, but the Home Secretary, our current Home Secretary, our current Prime Minister, voted against every single measure brought forward to toughen up our immigration system. But why are we surprised by that? Because the reality is there were also people who were campaigning against the deportation of foreign criminals. They said criminals, one of whom went on to commit a very heinous, awful crime, who were lined up and were going to be shipped out, flown out of this country. They were there campaigning against those people being deported. And now they're in charge of the government, they're in charge of our borders, and all of a sudden the number of illegal arrivals is up 50%, more people in hotels, and less of those people who are breaking in the country are being deported. It's about motivations. These people are not serious about getting a handle on this problem.
Let me ask you about a couple more stories that are in the news today. One is the political news that Andrew Gwynn is standing down from Parliament. There'll be a by-election in Denton and Reddish. I just wonder whether you would prefer a Reform UK MP to win there or a Labour MP to win, because the Conservatives haven't a hope in that constituency.
Well, I'm sure we're putting forward a fantastic candidate, fantastic local candidate who'll put on a hell of a show. But the reality is,
won't win.
This by-election and all of the kerfuffle around should Andy Burnham run, shouldn't he run, how's Keir Starmer going to try and take him out? We've got Wes Streeting running his leadership campaign. These people's doing anything but dealing with the issues facing the country. They've got a majority of how many? Yeah, it's U-turn after U-turn. They entered office with no plan, no aim, no objective. They stand for nothing. All they do is dole out benefits and crush our economy. People being put out of work by this government. Perhaps if they stop messing around with their internal issues and the scrabbling and the fighting and the scrapping and concentrated on what they're doing.
I mean,
to our economy,
your party wrote the book. Matt, your party wrote the book on internal battles and scrambling around.
I think, well, I would take that as a criticism. However, I'd say we've got a cracking new leader. We're united around that cause, and we're holding.
Robert Jenrick wasn't united about it. Robert Jenrick wasn't united about it. You've got four members of Reform UK or former Conservative MPs.
When this government got control of this economy, there were near record levels of employment. Inflation was on target. We've now got 21% more people out of work. That is people's lives. That is their livelihoods. They're out there unable to provide for their families. It is horrific what they're doing.
And you're right in saying that. I just want to ask you about two more issues just briefly before we go to a break. One is this Troubles bill. Badenoch says it will cost lives. Labour put it through last night. Your own bill, or the previous government's bill, I should say, more accurately, was not welcomed in Northern Ireland at the time. This hasn't been either. What's the way to solve this? What would if a Conservative government were elected tomorrow, how would they deal with this issue?
This is an utter betrayal of those people who put their life. I mean, this is, of all the things that he's done several terrible things, but this is amongst the worst that this Labour government's delivered. We're seeing pensioners dragged through the court, not just any pension, people who put their lives on the line for this country. It is entirely unacceptable. We've seen the Labour Party vote it down, rid of it. Farage and Jenrick didn't turn up to vote, actually. This is huge. And what does it say to people who we're trying to recruit now? We're in an ever more dangerous world. What does it say to those people who are out there today, who are serving their country, putting their lives on their line to protect us. And we're saying that when you get in that care home in 50 years' time, you're going to get a knock at the door and you're going to be dragged through the court is entirely unacceptable. It is a disgrace and is a betrayal of the highest order.
There is a lot we will get into in this. We're getting calls and texts and tweets coming in to all of that. It's a very, very serious issue, and we will, of course, talk about it between now and 7. Arguably a less serious issue. Well, it is absolutely a less serious issue, but one on which you will have an opinion, no doubt. I know you keep your finger on the pulse of popular culture. Matt, are you team Brooklyn or team Victoria?
I do think it's ridiculous, isn't it, that a youngster who is famous by virtue of his parents is now front page news. How have we got to this? The issues going on in the world, and the newspapers are flooded with a dispute between mother and son. I just think it's balmy.
You haven't bought Not Such an Innocent Girl on iTunes then?
Well, I just think it's mad. I think it's mad. I mean, she's quite a long way gone in terms of front page stuff, yet we're still obsessed with them, aren't we?
You have not denied not buying Not Such an Innocent Girl on iTunes there, Matt Vickers. I've got to give you one more chance. Is it in your iTunes collection, yes or no?
It is not in my iTunes collection. I've got much better taste than that, Peter, as you well know.
OK, Matt, thank you very much. That's Matt Vickers there, Shadow Home Office Minister, answering the important questions and those that are arguably much less important. Lots to discuss, lots of people want to get on the air about all sorts of issues. Thank you to everybody who's been in touch today. We'll get more calls in just a few minutes. If you want to get your call on the air between now and 7, 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
Why are our politicians crucifying our veterans? I am so angry. I am so furious. None of them have ever carried a rifle. What's next? Afghan? Iraq? Hey? No shame on these people. Disgrace.
These are men and women who put their lives on the line for our country, and we've got a government who thinks it would be a good idea to prosecute them. This is the same party that's gladly going to sit around the table with Gerry Adams and IRA leaders who blew to smithereens people's lives, their homes and their businesses for many, many years.
Across the UK, on on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Carl in Liverpool has given me a ring on 0344 499 1000 about this Troubles bill that's been passed by the government and could see more veterans prosecuted. Carl, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say this evening?
Hi, good evening, Peter. You did tell me to call back when it came about, so
and thank you for doing so, Carl. Thank you.
Yeah, I just feel, I think if it goes past the law, if the Lords, because the Lords get a vote on it now.
That's right.
Peter.
Yeah, it's gone to them. So
if they passed it, then what a bunch of traitors.
I think they'll vote against. There are a lot of military figures in there, aren't there?
Yeah, I'm hoping so. But, you know, Peter, when I joined the military at 16, it was one of the proudest days of my life to wear my oath of allegiance to the Queen. If God forbid it doesn't, and it does go ahead, you know, you wear that little Union Jack on your shoulder and you're proud to serve and you do what's necessary, you will see no one want to join any of the services.
Yeah.
No one will want to join because of this. Because, I mean, we have the King sitting there with all his medals and everything. You think he'd pip up, you know, and say something. But no, it's almost like our history, our culture, our way of life, what the great British people have done for this country during the world wars, and obviously
that's all absolutely right. And I think the problem is, Carl, that it's not just a historical matter, as you correctly say it is. That's true, but it's also about people signing up right now who may be thinking, hold on a second, if I do what my commanding officer has told me to do, well, for the rest of my life I may well be culpable for that, and I might be in court as a result of that. Now, the thing is that there were some people who didn't follow the orders correctly, who went beyond what they should have done and did break the law. But it's just not equitable when it comes to so many terrorists who got off scot-free.
Yeah, it's not fair, is it? If you think about it, you know, both sides. One side has done something, and another side's done another that matches that. But what it shows is that a complete lack of respect for those veterans who will suffer from the worst sorts of PTSD, you know, maybe on the streets, you know, loneliness.
A lot of them have physical injuries as well, losing limbs or mobility or lots and lots of different things. Carl, I wonder, I mean, when you look at how, for example, the United States treats its veterans, I remember I was in a lovely restaurant in Texas, and there were discounts for the military. I think it was 25% military discount, something like that. There were people coming in uniform. They were welcomed as heroes. Thank you so much for coming here. Please sit down. You know, usually really good service anyway, but it sort of went the extra mile for people who served in the military. And I do feel that we just don't value those who serve this country with any real reverence in this country. I wonder what you think of that, Carl.
Yeah, absolutely. We as a veteran, we stopped being able to wear our uniforms within our own country.
Yeah.
When that horrific Lee Rigby incident.
Yes.
That just stopped us. I mean, he was wearing the Hell for Heroes t-shirt. But if I may, Peter, I was working with Americans 2017 on it was like a multi-capables exercise, and it was countries from all over Europe, the States, Canada, etc. And you know, in the American Army, they are so well thought of. One of the sergeants I was talking to, he told me a story. He was at an airport and he was coming through, and he was quite a crowd gathering, and they were all singing and cheering. And when he asked what was it for, he said, "Oh, there's a military bomb disposal dog retiring today, and he's on his last flight back."
Goodness.
You see veterans on our streets, Peter, sleeping in doorways where there's migrants, and you see veterans with begging bowls and PTSD issues and all sorts of things going on that are homeless, and there's not a thing that anyone can do. The government won't step in and do anything. There was something yesterday Kev hit on when he was talking about we're paying for migrants to go back to their own country and get set up businesses and that. And you know, if we can afford to do that and give those to those illegal men that have come into our country and paying them to go back and set them up in business, surely there's a few quid left for the British.
Well, I totally agree with you, Carl. I totally agree with you. And there's also...
It's all backwards, Peter. The whole thing is it's all backwards.
Well, it is. And there's so much talent in the Army and in the Navy and the Air Force as well. There's so many people who should be recruited as prison officers, who should be recruited for the police. There are loads of different jobs they could do. Not just those jobs, loads of different jobs, loads of different skills that you have as a result of that. Carl, listen, thanks for your call. I really appreciate that. Paul in Epsom says, nothing sums up the treachery of this government better than sending migrants into Crowborough in the middle of the night. Why not at lunchtime? And certainly there's a lot of people who want to talk about that. One of them is Martin in Exeter. He wants to talk about Crowborough. Martin, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Oh, hi, Peter. I've got relatives, or had relatives in Crowborough. I used to go down there quite a bit. And it's a very posh, very white, very middle class, really nice little town, which is everything that this government hates about this country. And it is kind of linked to the Northern Ireland thing, in that I think they are deliberately placing migrants, illegal migrants, in towns that are conservative, white, middle class.
You think this is a deliberate policy?
Well, funny enough, while I was waiting, I just had a quick look, and I used to live in Hertfordshire, and Epping is quite a nice area where Victoria Beckham comes from, and Stratford-upon-Avon, where there's another one, and I'll bet you if you had a map and put little dots, you would find, because we've got 500, is it a day or a week coming in? So they're going to...
It depends on the day, but certainly there are a heck of a lot of them, and there are hundreds on the days when the channel is calm, certainly, yeah.
Yeah. So I think we've got a government that hates this country, that is motivated by spite, and I'll bet you... Sorry if I sound a bit bitter. I'll bet you that some little oik in the Labour Party will be thinking, ha ha ha, I'll stick him in Crowborough. That'll, it's like the hunting ban. It's all related. It's like prosecuting these servicemen. No other government would do that. And I'll have a little bet with you. If you did a little map of dots where they're placing these migrants, you'll find that it's in the areas where it can do the least damage to the Labour Party.
Interesting. Well, certainly, I mean, there were prosecutions of veterans under Conservative governments previously, and that had happened. They would say they would try to sort this out. But listen, your point is a good one, Martin, and thank you for it. That's Martin in Exeter there with his points and all of that. Lots on that point actually about veterans, and Paul is in Belfast. Paul MBE in Belfast says, I did 33 years in the army, 26 years in Northern Ireland, serving in Belfast, South Armagh and Derry. I resigned because it came to the point where our MOD lawyers themselves started to believe the Sinn Féin IRA lies told about controversial incidents that had happened, some of which I was involved with. Colleagues of mine have already had a knock at the door. I fully expect to be next, says Paul. Amanda says, my heart goes out to our brave veterans. How must they feel when they see this traitorous government sticking up to those who would do us harm while betraying our own, says Amanda. And Jean in Southport says, I cannot believe Tories coming onto programmes criticising illegal immigration management or lack of it. There's not been a decent, effective government since pre-Blair, and sadly I voted for him, says Jean in Southport. Mark is in Lincolnshire and has some thoughts on Crowborough. 0344 499 1000, the number he has called. Hiya, Mark. How are you doing?
Hi there, Peter. I'm all right. Yourself?
Yeah, very well, thanks. What would you like to say, Mark?
Crowborough, I mean, as your last caller was saying there, it's quite a relatively well-to-do area from what I can gather. It's pretty much, when I looked at the electoral map, it's pretty much a Lib Dem. So you get what you vote for at the end of the day. I do feel sorry for them. It's a terrible thing. This is happening across the country. And yes, your last caller was right. It will be targeted at places that Labour really just hates. Let's be honest about it. And it's also, what we seem to miss out with all of that as well, I think, is that the whole point, they literally do have a policy, don't they, where they're literally saying that it will go from the top to the bottom of the country. Everybody will get a taste of it, essentially. But it's also quite important as well, because when you've got to look at the bigger picture, I think, because the vast majority of these people, certainly under a Labour government, will be getting some form of ILR or, they'll get citizenship
and
within a
definitely
year
leave to
or two.
remain. Yeah.
Yeah, they'll get all that within a year or two, which starts bringing them into the eligibility for voting and what have you. So this is the other issue that I have with all this, is they're basically essentially rigging elections at the end of the day, because these migrants will only vote one way, let's be honest. We all know which way that'll be. It'll be left-wing, it'll be Labour, or it'll be Greens or something like that. I think the Crowborough thing in itself, when you actually think about that, it's a nonsense, because what they're talking about is a facility that, as far as I'm aware, will never house more than, 1,500 or 2,000 maximum, something like that, even if it's that many.
They're only going to have about 560 of these men in it, Yeah,
well, they're saying this, of course, we've got to close down the asylum hotels. Well, 560, you could fill that in 3 days.
Yeah, or less.
So how's that shutting any hotels down? Because it's absolute garbage.
Well, exactly, and I think a lot of those. Well, I mean, it is factual that some hotels, in fact, about half the hotels have been closed down, but they're just putting them in other different areas and housing multiple occupancies and so on as well. Mark, just before you go, I wonder if I could ask you about another story we're talking about today. I don't know if you've been hearing or you've heard most of the show, but there was that extraordinary story earlier about the Amazon delivery driver nicking the cat. I know you're a big cat man yourself, Mark. I just wondered if you had any thoughts on that.
I haven't actually seen the video. I've seen similar ones though in the past. Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a strange one, isn't it? At the end of the day,
it's really weird. It's really weird.
I'm not quite sure. I mean, what was he going to do with this? Was he going to sell it? The cat?
Well, I hope not. I mean,
the
cat. The cat's now back, which is great, which is a really, really positive thing anyway. But it's just a very, very strange story. Mark, listen, thanks for your thoughts on all of that. And on the cat, actually, Mike's been in touch. Said my neighbour called me while they were away, quite upset because his cat tracker app showed his cat moving around the town 10 miles away at quite high speeds. They thought he had been catnapped and was being touted for sale. Then they spotted him on the CCTV at home, wandering casually down the stairs at home. It turns out a delivery service guy had picked up the cat's collar from the ground with a tracker on it and had carried on his delivery round in Grimsby. Well, I'm sure that was a sigh of great relief for them as well. I actually have Jack. My cat, his chip is registered with an outfit. There are three or four of these different companies where you register the chips and dogs as well, but particularly in cats, it's now illegal not to have your cat chipped. And they're called Pet Track. And I tweeted them one time and said, when you come into work, do you hum the song Pet Track, Pet Track, Pet Track to where you once belonged? Stay with us here on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Paul's in Milton Keynes and says, well done for holding Matt Vickers to task. He knows full well Rishi Sunak didn't back Robert Jenrick when he was serving in his cabinet. I predict Vickers will be knocking on Reform's door sooner rather than later. Well, we know, of course, that we're still waiting to hear who the Labour defector is. Kate Hoey says it's not her. A number of other people have ruled themselves out, including Graham Stringer, who I spoke to the other day on the programme. And certainly there are many people speculating as to what might happen there. Andy Burnham as well, I'm sure will be in the papers tomorrow in the Sun. But one of their big stories, and John Lucas, who's the night news editor, is with me now. Hi, John.
Hello.
That you're talking about is Crowborough, and the first group of small boat migrants bust into that controversial army camp. Tell us your coverage of this.
Yeah, that's right. Well, they did it in the dead of night, early hours of the morning.
3:30 in the morning?
Yeah, exactly. And Well, they did it because we've had 11 weeks or so of protests down there from the locals, who are very, very worried about their safety and the town. And at the moment, it's 27 have been taken in there, and it's got capacity for about 500. Now, not long ago, it was actually being used to train cadets, and they were all sort of booted out of there. And now it's going to have these migrants. Now, we've been down there today talking to some of the people who've been running this campaign. They call it Crowborough Shield. Made up from local residents and councillors and all the rest of it.
We've been talking to a couple of councillors on the programme as well, and our reporter Samara Gill was down there too. There's clearly a lot of angry people. Yeah, and I mean, from one point of view, obviously, the government does have to deal with the volume of people who are here. We know last year about 40,000 people have arrived on the small boats. So what Shabana Mahmood is saying is that this is part of a process to end the use of asylum hotels, which is obviously incredibly costly. And she says in a statement, Crowborough is just the start. I will bring forward site after site until every asylum hotel is closed and returned to communities. I will not rest until order and control to our borders is restored. Yeah. However, slight sort of issue here is this week we've already had 730 people cross the channel in small boats. So that is already the capacity of Crowborough. There's going to be another site that they're planning to use in Scotland. There are other sites such as Wethersfield in Essex near Braintree, which locals have been, very angsty about the prospect of that being used. I mean, ultimately, it's not going to solve the wider issue. There's a heck of a lot of people who need to be housed. If the plan isn't to deport in much larger numbers. It raises so many different questions. We've been getting into them on the show, and if you want to get your voice and your opinion across on that, you can give me a ring before 7 on 0344 499 1000. I want to talk about Baron Trump. This is Donald Trump's youngest son. This is a curious story. Tell us about this. Yeah, so weird Trump story of the day doesn't actually involve Donald directly. It's his extremely tall son. Very tall son, 6'7", this guy. I mean, Donald Trump is a big man. I think he's 6'2" or something like that. He's a big guy, but Baron is, I think he's got 5 kids with his various... so 3 wives, I think. Yeah, that's it. But Baron is the son of Melania, current, most recent, and you'd think probably the final wife. Anyway... You never know. Very bizarre court case at Snaresbrook. So it's a horrible domestic abuse allegation which involves violence and allegation of rape, and it's a live court case. It's involving a guy called Matvey Rumiantsev, and he's a 22-year-old guy. He's an ex-MMA fighter. His parents are Russian, but he's lived here for about 15 years anyway. Baron Trump was on a video chat with his girlfriend. She was staying at his flat in Poplar, and during the course of this call, this Russian chap allegedly started to assault her. Now, what we've heard from court today is that he was jealous of her friendship with Baron Trump, and when Baron saw what was going on, so this happened in January last year, so he was 19, or 18 at the time, 19 now. He figured out what he had to do, so he managed to get through on 999, got put through to City of London Police, and there's a bit of a transcript where he's saying, I'm calling from the US, I just got a call from this girl, she's a friend of mine, she's getting really badly beaten up, and I don't know what could have happened by now. He was in a huge panic, and police are able to, from the information he provided, they were able to scramble officers to this flat and intervene, and this guy was arrested. Now, Baron was asked to cooperate a bit more with the investigation, and we saw from court some emails where he discussed, being very close to this woman and
just a bit more about what he saw happening on this call, because allegedly this guy had directed the camera onto what he was doing so that Barron could see. It's all very disturbing stuff.
Yes, very strange.
But she has stood up in court today and given evidence, and she said, Barron, helped save my life. That call was like a sign from God at that moment. So it's an ongoing case. The guy, he denies 2 counts of rape, assault, ABH, strangulation and perverting the course of justice. So he's pleaded not guilty. So the trial's still going on. But yeah, extraordinary stuff. Very sort of bizarre, but fair play to Barron. You know, he was quick thinking in that moment. He was obviously, 3,000 miles away or whatever, and he's managed, as she says.
If that alleged assault was happening, he certainly did the right thing in that. So the trial continues, and of course the Sun will have full information about what is said and the denials that Matvei Rumenantsev has there. Let's talk about Roman gladiators, because I remember when Russell Crowe got really fat, someone sent me a message and said, you finally got Russell Crowe's body, which was slightly unfair, but nonetheless true. So tell us about Roman gladiators. They're apparently not ripped like Paul Mescal and Russell Crowe.
Well, yeah. So Paul Mescal obviously was
Gladiator
in the sequel,
2.
Gladiator 2, which I mean I've not seen it.
Neither have I.
No, I don't think it is. It's not as great as the original Gladiator, for which Russell Crowe said he lost about 18 kilos through the fitness regime he had to go into to get into shape. Obviously Mescal, he's a bit of a skinny guy, isn't he? But he's in decent shape. Anyway, historians say they've got it all wrong, because real gladiators would have been pretty fat. They mainly ate a very carb-heavy diet of this barley and bean stew, and they would have had huge, big, misshapen bodies full of subcutaneous fat, because they needed to be able to get cut and stabbed in
and then recover
so
from
that they would bleed almost in a sort of Hollywood way.
Right.
The crowd would see all the blood, but they wouldn't have damage to their internal organs.
Interesting.
So
I know that's why I keep such a healthy stack of subcutaneous fat.
Exactly.
In case I get massacred in a gladiatorial arena.
They weren't lean and muscular, but they became heartthrobs because they became attractive because they weren't conventionally pretty, is what these historians were saying. And yeah, so we tried to come up with some headlines.
Go for it.
So we had, for those about to dine, for those about to die, we salute you. So for those about to die, I think they've gone with for those about to pie. Maybe that works.
Okay, yeah.
Maximus Dinerus.
Like it, yeah, very good.
Gladiators, that was our head of news come up with that. I don't think they've gone with it. Hail Caesar salad.
Okay, yeah.
I don't think it works. And wide loads lead to Rome. All
I like that one. I like that one. That's very good. That's very good.
Yeah.
We'll see in the Sun tomorrow, in your copy of the Sun, and indeed online at thesun.co.uk. All of those stories. For the meantime, John, as always, thank you. John is the night news editor of the Sun. Lots to discuss in just a second, including the postponement of all those elections, local elections, in 29 areas to speed up a major reorganisation of councils across England. We may well take some calls as well. We have time, and we'll talk to Kevin O'Sullivan as well on what's coming up on his programme after 7. Loads still to talk about between now and 7 here on Talk Drive.
Why are our politicians crucifying our veterans? I am so angry. I am so furious. None of them have ever carried a rifle. What's next? Afghan? Iraq? Eh? No shame on these people. Disgrace.
These are men and women who put their lives on the line for our country, and we've got a government who thinks it would be a good idea to prosecute them. This is the same party that's gladly going to sit round the table with Jerry Adams and IRA leaders who blew to smithereens people's lives, their homes and their businesses for many, many years.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Loads of our viewers and listeners very, very angry about the postponement of these local elections. Let's just remind ourselves about what Steve Reid, the local government secretary, said in the House of Commons about this earlier on today.
I can now confirm my decisions to the House. I have decided to bring forward legislation to postpone 29 elections. I have deposited a list of these in the House of Commons library. I have received one further representation this morning that I will consider, then report back to the House on my decision. In all other areas, council elections will go ahead as planned, many having offered no evidence that it would delay reorganisation in their areas.
Well, Professor Tony Travers is a local government expert. He's director of LSE London, a research group at the London School of Economics. Tony, thanks for joining me today. Can you just clear something up? Because I keep saying postponed, other people keep saying cancelled, and I've been taken to task on this. Reform UK often say cancelled, a lot of different media outlets say cancelled, some say postponed. What's correct in your view?
Well, I think these particular elections are being cancelled. They're not going to take place at some future point. The reason for the government is doing this is because there's going to be a reorganisation of local government, moving from a county with districts down to just single unitary authority in each area. Now, those new unitary councils which come into existence will hold elections almost certainly in 2027, possibly 2028, and start life in the year after. But for the elections that are being not taking place, they are in effect cancelled because these councils won't exist in the future.
What do you think it says about local democracy? Is this perfectly reasonable to say, actually, we're going to have this reorganisation and we can't have elections, or should the elections go ahead in your view?
Well, there have been postponements and cancellations of elections in the past when there have been reorganisations of local government. So it's not as if this is entirely new. What is different here is not it's the scale of it, because there's a much bigger reorganisation going on in many parts of England. I think the other thing is that the government offered councils the choice, and the Electoral Commission, an independent body, I think has made clear it thinks that that was probably not an appropriate way of going about this.
So the government should just have told them this is happening?
I think if they just told them to do it, it would have seemed better practice in many ways.
Were they trying to shift the blame, perhaps, Tony?
Well, I think I don't know is the honest answer, but there's no question that by offering the councils that were up for election the possibility of effectively choosing whether or not to hold them, those councils without question have a vested interest. Now, in fairness, many decided to go ahead with the elections, and that sort of begs the question about whether it was really necessary. But I think that the whole way, it's the scale of what's going on and the fact that for some places elections will have been or not taken place twice, 2 years running. That's the problem.
So when it comes to people who feel aggrieved by this, are they right to?
I can see that if you live in an area where elections should take or were expected to take place this year, and they're not going to take place this year, you may well feel aggrieved. voting in elections is the bedrock of local and national democracy, and losing the right to vote, even where the government believes there are reasons for it, is just inevitably at a time when people are already a bit fed up with democracy in many countries, including the UK, according to polling. It doesn't sort of play well, I think.
Oh, Tony, you still there?
I am.
Oh, great. So the point I suppose I wanted to make, or the question I wanted to ask, particularly in regard to this, is, I mean, there are a lot of political parties, particularly Reform UK, saying that this could actually skew how things would be if those elections had gone ahead. Now, you could argue that actually Labour would be even more unpopular in a couple of years' time. Do you think this will give us, I mean, in a sense, we'll never know, I suppose, but could this really skew the way local government is and the strengths of some of those parties if you have these elections at a later date?
Well, certainly if we look at where the Labour Party and indeed the Conservative Party are in terms of their vote share in recent opinion polls and compare it where those parties were back in the year when these elections were last fought 4 years ago, then clearly there's been a shift of support away from Labour and the Conservatives towards reform, but also to the Greens and in some places the Liberal Democrats. So all the parties that were expecting to gain, and they probably almost certainly would have gained in a number of the councils where there won't be elections now, without doubt will feel aggrieved, and arguably with good reason.
Tony, thank you as always. Professor Tony Travers there, local government expert. He's also director of LSE London, which is a research group at the London School of Economics. Let's speak to David in London about Andy Burnham. That's certainly an election, a by-election, which may cause many problems for Labour. Maybe it'll be held on the same day as those local elections. We don't know just yet. David, what are your thoughts on this? You're very welcome to the programme.
Hello, Peter.
Hi there.
Yeah, my thoughts are, my real confusion about it is I don't understand it properly. I'm not sure, but it seems to me that the candidate has to be nominated for that position. So if Andy Burnham doesn't get nominated by the Labour Party, he would have to stand as an independent.
I don't think he would, though, would he, really, David? Because, I mean, if his wider ambition is not just to be the MP for the area, but also to perhaps lead the Labour Party, if he's not selected, he'll just stay as Mayor of Manchester, won't he?
Yeah, I guess so, wouldn't he? Yeah. My other question about that would be in relation to the actual elections that are coming up, the ones that they've put 29 of them or whatever it is on hold.
Yeah, 29, yeah.
For that, I can't understand. I mean, the Nuremberg trials ran from November 1945 to 1946. That's just less than a year to sort out the whole of the Nuremberg trials then.
I mean, things do take a long time. It's very interesting, actually, when you look at historical comparisons. Certainly when you look at, the Gettysburg Address, for example, was, 800 words or something, maybe not even as many as that. And there are, so many things that seem to be take an awfully long time to do. What do you think of those elections being postponed, cancelled, whatever you want to call them, David?
Well, it's interesting because if you go back 338 years ago, you had Shrewsbury, Devonshire, Danby, Lumley, Russell, Sydney, and the Bishop of London at the top of their political game, and they all lobbied Parliament for the Glorious Revolution, which said the people are so generally dissatisfied with the present conduct of the government in relation to their religion, liberty, and properties. 19 parts of 20 of the people throughout the United Kingdom are desirous of a change.
Yeah, well, I'm a fully paid up Williamite, as you know. David, thank you for that. That's David in London there. I never understood the Battle of the Boyne, though. We won the battle, but they got the river. Andrew's in Liverpool and has some thoughts on Crowborough. Andrew, you're very welcome to the programme. Tell us your thoughts.
Hi, Peter. Yeah.
Hi there.
Just generally speaking, the illegal migrants that have been coming over, I know, for 15 years. I mean, it should have happened initially then. But, they come across with no passports, nothing, no identification. They should be interned. So, you may say...
Well, I agree with you, Andrew, and I do think that, there shouldn't be any privileges if you enter a country illegally. I mean, if you took a flight and broke through the border security there without showing your passport, without being here properly, that would be a criminal act. It is a criminal act to be here illegally, and that is something that you know, there's no restriction in those people's liberty, really. They've got to sign in and sign out. Some do, some don't. You know, with 53,000 illegal migrants and migrant criminals at large, and we've said we're going to have 65 people to try and find them, Andrew. It doesn't strike me as enough.
It's insane. I mean, if they were interned on, I don't know, remote Scottish islands with infrastructure, good, stable tents, you know, how many would then want to come? That's another issue, isn't it?
Well, there's got to be some form of deterrence, certainly, Andrew. I mean, do you think the government gets this? Do they understand it? Do they see that this is a huge issue that so many people, including those in Crowborough, are really, really concerned about?
I think they probably understand it, but don't really care. Is the issue, you know, because, I mean, Starmer will be going, oh, international law, and this treaty, that treaty. Desperate times need desperate measures, in my view.
Andrew, thank you very much indeed for your thoughts on all of that. That's Andrew in Liverpool who gave me a ring there on 0344 499 1000. We're going to keep looking at Crowborough, seeing what happens there, seeing how the locals react and so on. I would imagine it'll be part of Kevin O'Sullivan's programme. He's coming up after the news. Hi, Kevin.
It certainly will. We're going to talk to one of the leading lights in the long-running process, Kim Bailey, a very articulate lady who sums up the terrible story of what's happened in that town. I mean, this is the story of Britain, that asylum seekers, undocumented, mostly young male foreigners, are being sprayed all over the country, and you have these passionate protests by small communities like Crowborough in East Sussex. Only 22,000 people live there. And they're basically saying, we can't take 547 young men. And what does the Home Office do? Completely ignores them. This is the story of the asylum seeker.
And I've been talking to people in Crowborough today who just say, completely as you say, Kevin, that they'd raised all sorts of issues, they'd wanted at least to be informed, and they weren't informed. They were brought in the middle of the night.
It's bust in under the cover of night. The first 27 have arrived, and there's you know, more than 500 more to come. Also, I find it really almost bizarre that the government, the Northern Ireland Secretary Hilary Benn, went out of his way, out of the government's way, to remove this clause from the Troubles Bill that was offering, you know, pretty much immunity to all those poor old veterans who are now in their 70s, who served in Northern Ireland during the Troubles half a century ago. They went out of their way to
change the legislation.
You know, that is extraordinary. Got Hilary Benn pompously saying we believe in the rule of law. Their obsession with the rule of law has turned them into